It's just about the most testing day you could possibly imagine on a bicycle. We're waiting at Val Martello for the brave souls that make up this 97th Giro d'Italia to go for it. And boy, what about the weather today? It's slightly grim. Rain here and there. Temperature 5 Celsius. That's more than chilly. In fact, that's quite nasty. You can see when you breathe in the air on the mountaintops here, it does feel extraordinarily moist. The wind today blowing northwesterly, so cold when they feel it. However, it's going to be on the downhill sections where I guess the wind that they generate simply because of those runs off the peaks today that hurt. The climbs are designed to hurt. This is a day that was always going to be a tough one. Gavia, Stelvio, and of course Val Martello to finish off, and it will finish off many a challenge today. It's a big old loop. It's only 139 kilometers, but with so much climbing, 4,500 meters of it, you can understand that this is perhaps the ultimate test of this year's race. They climb very, very quickly and get busy for 17 kilometers. That's of going up, I should say, and then they head downhill off the Gavia and bounce onto the Stelvio. Dan Lloyd, this, particularly the finish today, is going to find the wreckage of much ambition, I think, on the peaks.
They're having to ride over these mountains given the conditions, although his teammate Mick Rogers says this is what we've got to deal with, we'll make it hard. So kind of contrary to his teammate in many ways, but sometimes when you as riders get word from the organisation that possibly there could be a rerouting, which is something that they did consider. They cleared the Passo del Tonale, which of course is where they were going to take the race last year when it looked like it was going to be cancelled, or maybe even cancel the stage altogether like last year. And of course, once you get that in your head, especially as one of the sprinters who, let's not forget, they're going to be suffering more than anybody else today, the likes of Buani there in the red jersey. Once you start thinking that possibly you could have a day off and not have to go through it, then it becomes even harder once you realise that actually you will have to take on the original stage.
So that was then, not very long ago either. They've just rolled off. As you can see, the clock is rolling, but unfortunately, due to the weather, we have some picture issues for the time being. And so what we plan to do is actually bring you up to speed with everything that's happened so far. So we have a rider, Chalaput, up the road at the moment, and one rider away, Dan, but it's a tough ask on a day such as this. No surprise to see that Movistar, likewise, are on guarding duties. Pierre Rollon's boys are there, and Arredondo, to the fore, will be out to steal some mountain points, maybe only over the first one.
Yeah, you say it's a tough ask for Chalaput, and it indeed is when we see who's doing the chasing behind and almost the attacking. We've got Movistar riding on the front. We presume this is the group behind Chalaput. Like yourselves at home, we're still actually a little bit unclear on exactly what the situation is on the road at the moment. Two riders, though, still in front of Nairo Quintana, the leader, of course, from that Movistar team. So he said that he wasn't feeling too good. He was still suffering from an infection. But given the way that his team are riding, maybe that was just something that he was saying to the press, and actually he's got pretty good legs today.
I think that's almost exactly it, Dan. It's the sort of day where you're trying to not only play the game strategically, you're trying to deliver it physically, and you're playing a mental game as well. You have to be strong in all departments, don't you, on this kind of day?
Yep, you have to be able to cope with weather conditions, of course. With climbing, you have to be able to be mentally strong, because it's still a long day in the saddle by time. Even though it's only 139 kilometres, it's of course going to take them in the region of 4.5 hours. This group already down to what looks like around about 25, 30 riders maybe. I can see Hejadal down there, I can see Roland as well. Maybe he will go on the tack sooner rather than later. You can see they've got their arm warmers here. They've already put some effort in, so the heat is beginning to go around the body, but I can tell you that will disappear very, very quickly when they come down the bottom. Still some way for them to go until they get to the top of this climb at the Gavia. 115.7 k's to go is when they will reach that point.
Yes, and then when they start the descent, it's a really nasty one. 25.7 kilometres in length. It's highly technical towards the top because the road is quite narrow. It does widen out for a section of around 12k towards the bottom of the road, that is, but it kind of gets narrower and narrower and narrower the higher up they go. They pass by and further away, I guess, from or civilization, if that's what you can call it, in the valleys. But yes, as the road is required less as you get more and more up towards the peak, then yes, it naturally doesn't have to accommodate too much traffic, and it does get narrower and narrower. We're looking at Chalapud, the front group, and it may well be a little bit later that he engages his strategy. He was supposed to go early. The man who has gone earliest of all, it seems, at least since our picture's linked back up, is the man on your screen at the moment, Chalapud. And his gap has been a healthy one. It's gone up to about 38 seconds. Last reading that we have positive was 26, positive time check. But right now, it's a bit of a mystery to us, I'm afraid. However, he's about to crest this, and will do in about 1,300 metres time. And guess what? Arredondo decides to just roll off the nose, and he's going to have some competition here. I think possibly just a free ride.
Looks like Duarte, the teammate of Chalapud, getting straight onto the wheel of Arredondo. So Colombians 1, 2, 3, and then to the 4 in the bunch as well. Of course, with Quintana, and in the pink jersey, Carlton, Rigoberto Urán. Well, they'll be cheering over there in South America.
I think they will. Takes the inside line. There's a little chat going on. It says, it's okay, I'm not here to stop you. I'm here to ride on with you and then maybe join up with my teammate. Shocking conditions as they go up the Gavia right now with 116.8 to go, which suggests to me that already Chalapud is on the descent and has gone through. No. So the transponders are in error as well, I'm afraid. In fact, we've got another kilometre to go. The only thing that's in error is my mathematics. I
think it's your glasses, because you even wrote 115.7 on your own book. 9% is the average until they get to a K to go, and then that final 500 or penultimate 500 metres, 8.4%. A slight bit of respite for the final 500 metres up here at 6.4%. I have actually raced up here, if you want to call it that, myself, Carlton, back in the 2010 Giro d'Italia. Again, it was one of the climbs that we did reasonably early in the stage, not quite like today, but certainly I was suffering by this point just to stay in the gruppetto. I'd been chasing right at the start, a break of 22 riders, because we hadn't got anybody in it, and Carlos Sastre ordered us to the front, which of course means that by the time you even get to the foot of the climb, you're already close to your limit. So I really struggled up this, which is of course a very, very long climb in terms of time taken to get up it. The actual distance of the climb is only 16.5 Ks. I say only because actually that's pretty much the shortest climb that they're going to have to contend with today. 21.7 kilometres is the Stelvio, and Val Martello, whilst it's not quite as steep on average, is even longer than that, 22.35 kilometres in length.
Chalapud, just look at the just look at how long it's taking him just to do 100 metres here. It's hardly sprinting, but he's out of the saddle right now, and when it says 115.7, then he'll have some respite. A little bit further down, still in the cloud, incidentally. So Chalapud is about to emerge from it. His teammate from Team Colombia, Pantano, there in the black rain top, just behind Arredondo, who is our King of the Mountains jersey leader. Pantano's not going to stop him taking those points. He certainly doesn't want to be the Colombian that stopped a Colombian winning a blue jersey, of course, so he'll be helping him as much as he possibly can. But then he can get back to his teammate here. Not sure how the descending skills of Arredondo. They're going to be tested, though, as soon as they go over the top, because it is very, very nasty, particularly technical, immediately so as they get over the crest.
Looks like behind we've got one of the riders from the Katusha team, and I think that's probably the Spaniard Losada. His teammate Belkov was one of the first to attack this morning after 8 kilometres, but was soon brought back by this man in the blue jersey, Arredondo, along with Pirazzi, who we haven't seen. A little bit of a surprise. I thought he'd be going with Arredondo here to potentially pick up mountain points, close in on that competition, which he of course won last year. Arredondo, to remind you, is on 75. The Belgian of Lotto Belisol, 57, so there's still a gap of 18 points there, and pretty much Arredondo could sew this competition up today if he manages to get close to maximum points on this climb and on the Stelvio. Yeah, I'm just wondering when Moreno's going to show his credentials. It is Losada at the moment, good man to have up the road, and the snow is starting to fall, albeit as wet sleet, which is spattering upon the camera, as you can see.
116 then, and 300 metres only left before Chalapud can enjoy the run down off this, the first test of the day. It is the Gavia. Next, after a descent of 25.7, it will be the Stelvio, and then it is Val Martello at the end of what is going to be, or has been described as the Queen stage of this year's Giro d'Italia. And there's no other way to describe it, Dan. I'm just glad that we've actually managed to get pictures today. It's clear what a task they have.
Well, I do hope that he's got some extra clothing awaiting him at the top of the Gavia here to put on for the descent. As you can see from the fact that his numbers there are exposed on the back, he literally just has his jersey and an undervest on and some arm warmers and mitts. If he goes down like that, Carlton, he's going to get very, very cold, because he's going to be descending at temperatures around about 4 degrees, we're told, at the top here at least, and that really is going to put a chill on his body if he doesn't put some extra clothing on.
Chalapud takes the first climb, and the countback begins right now. You'll get a perfect gap. Arredondo will be allowed to go through and underscore his credentials as far as the blue jersey competition is concerned. Expected to be about 30 seconds, but not much more than that, as they just approach that little zone of relief, I think. I have a little bit of a fear on this descent down, because it is extremely technical. It starts off very, very narrow and then widens out later on. There are some flatter sections within it. And look at this. That is a very good lead that Chalapud has actually put into this. And he's got his teammate to hook up with him as well. Arredondo comes through, takes second place, so he'll get a decent amount of points. 49 seconds the clock stops out, and he zips up and gets ready to head down.
A man who's just come up to the coattails of Arredondo and Duarte, teammate of the rider Chalapud, in front. So will Arredondo sit up here, or will he continue on in what could be a 4-man group forming? Just trying to see if I can get images from our other monitor of the main group coming over the top, but I can't. You can see the snow is falling here on the descent, just to add insult to injury. Not sure whether it's just because we've got a head-on shot that it looks like he's going slow, but I'm wondering whether he's already started to freeze Chalapud here under the conditions, descending. It's just going slow, so he's got less wind in his face.
Wouldn't surprise me. He also knows he's got teammates coming. They will help him out a little bit. What a desperate road surface that is, and it's shaking the motorcycle all over the place. I'm hearing that we have got Steadicam. It's just a very, very, very nasty road. And look at Chalapud just trying to pick his way through here amongst all the potholes and fissures that have been thrown up. There's been so much snow about, of which the snowplows have been busy banking it up. There's been a respite in terms of the snow, but it's actually coming back at us right now. And look at how it's just mobbing the lens, and that's basically the same vision that the riders are getting on their sunglasses and indeed wet weather specs at the moment. It's hard to see down, and it's hard to cope with the speeds, which is why they're practically zero at the moment.
Well, it's always hard to know what to do in these conditions, whether to leave your shades on or glasses, whatever you want to call them, and suffer from a lack of vision, because, as you said, Carlton, in these conditions, that sleet or snow does tend to stick to the lenses, and you cannot see very much. But as soon as you take them off, you've got that very, very cold air into your eyes, and it's hard to keep them open. At least it was for me. Some riders, of course, never used glasses. I'm thinking of the likes of Chris Boardman, the British rider, who was a prologue specialist. You never really used to see him using shades particularly much, but most of the riders will do. But yeah, it's a bit of a catch-22 situation on a day like today.
Look at that. So we've got a rider down already. Yeah, it's a puncture, thank goodness.
Kieselowski.
It's not a tumble. At least that is a blessing. We've got a looks like a neutral, or at least help just behind. I'm not sure how far the neutral service car is going to be from these guys, so it might well be a long wait while you are off the bike. And we've had a few others that feel confident on the descent down, who are just starting to join the party out of the main pack behind it. Is Kieselowski. He's got himself a puncture. Oh, and indeed very lucky to have a spare wheel being provided by one of the neutral bikes very close at hand. 105.5 kilometres to go. To be honest, if you are picking up a neutral wheel as well, if it's not the same contact point, not the same tyre that you have on the front wheel, that can cause issues as well in terms of balancing the bike.
Yeah, as I said, everything that they've got to cope with today. It's going to be extreme from start to finish. Of course, they started on a descent as well from Ponte di Legno, which itself is 1,350 metres above sea level. When they get to kilometre 90 to go, they will have just gone through the town of Bormio, and that is where the next climb will start. So still 15 kilometres more of descending for the leader before they get to that point.
I'm actually looking at rivulets running down here, and we're looking back. We're just taking a quick look at the Stelvio, incidentally. At least, now I'm not sure if these pictures are live. Let me just check. They are live, so at least the Stelvio has not got snow for the time being. But I have to report that we have snow falling at Val Martello at the finish right now, and it's coming down like very English snow, which is in great big gobs of snow, I'm afraid, wet and nasty. So the Stelvio is okay for the time being. The Gavia seems to be the major test which they have to get over, and it really is, as you've already seen, not a nice one. Graham Kidd has written in on Twitter and said, okay, this cannot be safe, let's cancel the stage, and many of you seem to be of the same view. Everyone's at least staying up at the moment, upright I should say, on their bicycles, and we'll see how they go when we get to this, the Stelvio, with its Fausto Coppi monument halfway up. I think possibly the latter, or maybe that's just my own little personal wager coming my way. Right now, Franco Pelazzotti is the leader on not of the race, but of the stage. And there he is on his beautiful Bianchi machine, and bandanaed up like an outlaw. And right now he's out of the bunch and he's having fun.
Yeah, no leg warmers for Rosa today. He obviously felt like he was going to go on the attack. To be honest, it was one thing that I didn't suffer from was cold legs, and it was just my body and hands and feet that really used to suffer a lot in the cold conditions. Legs were always fine.
He's got a real pace about him as well. It's scaring the pants off me at the moment. Brad Cole says this is part of the job that they didn't want to do, and I'm sure that they said they're not getting on the bikes, you can't make them. Well, riders want to ride, and to be honest, even in appalling conditions you still believe that you've got a chance, and so why not? Brad, you might be absolutely right. Greetings from Canberra, says Phil Walker, hoping Mick Rogers can win today. Stay warm, he says. That is going to be a priority for plenty out there. It's not as cold as you might have thought, but it's certainly going to feel it, especially if you're carrying a lot of moisture.
This is not Rosa, Carlton. This is Pelazzotti by the looks of things to me.
Yeah, we've already ID'd him.
Oh, sorry, I thought it came up as Rosa.
No, Pelazzotti is out in front and enjoying life. 95.7, yes, with his bandana. Nice shot actually as well, and it looks like conditions may well be easing. Certainly are over the Stelvio. You've got to be brave to go for it out here. So Androni Giocattoli Venezuela have got a man up the road. It'd be with 95 kilometres to go and the two climbs he's got. Don't please start thinking about victory for him today. It's a hugely tall order, but at least he's doing the thing for his sponsors and getting out there. And Androni have done a lot. They're probably looking jealously at Bardiani, to be honest, who've had more than their fair share of victories here as far as Androni are concerned. And here you see the sort of pace that they're taking into the tunnels. We just cut away because we're destined to lose signal when we go into those tunnels, I'm afraid. Yeah, just readjust yourself and try and stay as comfortable as you can today, and then just get on with the job at hand. It seems to be easing down. Certainly the snow at the finish line has ebbed, which is great. They're off the Gavia. If the Stelvio stays snow-free, then at least we can just get on and focus on the racing rather than just focus on the weather and how you cope with it.
Well, I have a feeling, Carlton, that this has already tipped things in different people's favours and tipped other people out of the overall classification in this race. It does seem like we've got riders in groups all over the road, which we'd normally expect to be together until the final climb of the day. Certainly Pelazzotti is the man who's come down here the best of everybody. He's gone from around about fifth place, we assume, over the top. On race radio we had Diego Rosa as fifth place over the top, but it might have been that he had his numbers covered up and it was in fact this man Pelazzotti.
Yeah, confirmation. These are live pictures now. So we started off with some recorded images. So yes, they are being busy. Let's put it that way. Well, we were busy saying, Dan, that at least at the top it's going to be clear. It is at the bottom. I think that's an indication of just how tough this climb is. 21.3 kilometers in length. Viamos, Cataldo and Pelizzotti are the men up the road, and they're out of the saddle on occasion as well, just coping with the inclines. There are some areas within this climb, incidentally, which will allow you to recover, but the maximum is 12%, and it comes halfway up this test. So just trying to get an exact distance on that for you. It will be about with 75 to go, something like that. So we're talking in about 12 k's time. It's a long old climb.
Yeah, it is. I think about 79 to go as well. They'll reach that steepest pitch, but they'll come towards the top in another, well, around about 19 kilometres from now. That's the front group, of course. These group here, as you can see now, 2 minutes and 40 seconds down on our leaders, which is still Cataldo, Pelizzotti and Viamo, who's had a fantastic Giro d'Italia so far. Wondering whether AG2R have got any kind of plan today. We saw Viamo right up the front in the second group. We've also got Hubert Dupont, and there on your screens now, just eating something in the black jersey right at the top of your screen, is Pozzovivo, who of course had a bad day the day before the rest day, losing a bit of time which he'd gained the previous day, kind of back to square one for him. So whether or not they've got a plan and Pozzovivo's feeling good today and wants some riders to jump across to, who knows? Or is he on a bad day and AG2R want to get something out of the stage?
Kieselowski, courtesy of having his rear puncture fixed rather quickly. A couple of Colombians here you can see as well, Chalaput and Pantano, Dupont and Niemiec representing Lampre, De Rosa from Androni. It's Dupont from AG2R La Mondiale, and he takes the 4 just now, or just eases off it, as Kieselowski picks up the pace. They're starting to look at each other, these guys, and they've got 2 minutes and 41 back to the Maglia Rosa group.
Might be that word has got to the riders down there on the ground that this could be the case, and maybe why they're trying to chase this break down now, because they know that then they'll all be together towards the bottom and they'll have a chance of a stage win as well. But we still have to confirm all of this. Don't take our word for it right at the moment. We'll have to wait for a few more kilometres. As to remind you, 68.7 to go is when they'll reach the crest of this climb.
Here you can understand why. It's very technical off the top. It's not quite so bad midsection, but technical again towards the bottom. Last thing you want to be doing is going through hairpins if there is ice falling. And right now, looks a bit dangerous. So what's happening is, at the moment, the chase is on by the GC contenders to get back to this group. If they can bridge over to them, and the gap is now only 10 seconds, then if there is a neutralisation on the descent off the Stelvio, they will all start together in that what we described as a catch zone at the bottom. It may also explain why Kieselowski's decided that he was going to have some fun as well out there. And Nicholas Roach, as you can see, grimacing, and it's proper snow now, and I can understand, Dan, why at least this is being mooted as a possibility.
Yeah, in fact it's been confirmed over race radio, Carlton. Word coming in from them, and I heard them telling the riders on the or telling the team managers, should I say, on the radio to inform your riders that it will be neutralised on this descent.
And it'll slowly go pink as we show you exactly where our leaders are. There it is. So still a little bit of descending to do, and then they will be sub-descending on a couple of steps, but there are little ramplets in the meantime. And indeed, in the meantime, Dario Cataldo is absolutely going for this. Thank you for your comments, incidentally. Chris O'Hearn says, why not a yellow flag to show a neutralised zone? They wouldn't have waved it today, Chris. It's confusion reigned at the top because the decision to neutralise the descent was clearly reversed. And you saw the confusion amongst the team cars as well. Many of those DSs not happy because it affected the approach to the top as well, and indeed the battle to get warm clothing up to the riders. So they decided level playing field, weather was improving, and so they decided to let them race on, which is what they've done. 47.4 kilometres to go, and we are just coming through some of the little towns and villages. This is Lhasa, I believe, that they'll be heading for in a moment, and then they'll take another series of steps down into the valley to Brano and the rest. The rain has been a constant feature throughout this Giro. Many of you writing in saying the weather's lovely in Ireland now. That's right. Clouds have followed this race, I'm afraid. Bari was indeed neutralised as they skittled all over the place. You remember Guarni taking that at the very last after relaying his way back on. They were calling for a neutralisation as we went up to Monte Cassino. It didn't happen, but it was another skittery day in the wet. Today, not a sprinting day, and the road surfaces generally in the mountains tend to be quite grippy for obvious reasons. That's the way they're built. And so the grip levels aren't really a problem unless we have ice and snow, which we certainly had for a time. And this man, Cataldo, is carrying 3 minutes and 40 over the Maglia Rosa group into the final climb. There are some intermediate riders on course, let's not forget, and they will be joining him fairly shortly. Thanks to all of you, by the way, for joining us. It's been a delight to have your company along the way, and we thank you for that. And well, Quintana today could actually run into the slope with a decent advantage. We're just hooking up at him right now. We're unaware of that, and that's why he rode on so purposefully on that descent, which once again was not neutralised off the Stelvio after a danger of that being imposed was rescinded when the weather turned to the warmer, and so snow turned to rain, turned to a decision to let them race on, and Cataldo took advantage, and he's out front at the moment. Those three guys, this must seem like a very, very fine day to be riding, especially given this chance.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to say given the circumstances today.
Well, neither am I, but we're going to have to let the commissaires sort this one out later on. The question is, where is Oran? That's the vital question that we have not got the answer to at the moment. And there's Roland saying, come on, Ejidal, let's do a bit of circulation here. And he's saying, go on, you carry on. I'm not going to help you. It's more important to you than it is to me. I'm doing the air bubble, the thought bubbles at the moment, or the speech bubbles. Yes, Oran, Roland calling for Ejidal to help out, and he's basically saying, look, get on with it. It means more to you than it does to me, just for the time being. Roland is in 8th place, Ejidal is in 11th place, and so he's riding on to him at the moment, and or tagging along, I should say. And you can understand to a certain extent, but equally he's going to have to put some effort in here if he's going to share in the prize at the end of the day, which could be a healthy gap back to Oran. We're wondering what that gap is right now. We'll bring it to you as soon as we know. Ejidal, Quintana, Rabatini, Roland, Sicard. What a group!
Well, it is a good group. It's going to be interesting to see if they all start to roll through and off once they get down to the foot of this descent off the Stelvio. Of course, at the moment, Quintana has his teammate up there to set the pace on the front in the form of Izaguirre. Behind, of course, now Uran, once news gets to him that it isn't utilised and that Quintana is a big, big threat, 1 minute and 40 seconds up the road, that he's got teammates with him who can do the chasing. 1 minute and 30 is the latest that we're being given between Uran and Quintana on the road.
That is a margin. 90 seconds. Now, what would that do for Quintana? 1 minute and 30 would bring him, if the race was to finish right now, would bring Quintana back to 1 minute and 10 seconds down, with the belief that he can do it again later on. We've still got the Zoncolan to come, don't forget. In the meantime, we've got the Panarotta as well, and we've got a climbing time trial, the Cima Grappa. This race is far from over. Yeah,
it's being turned on its head today, but it won't be over once they cross the finish line, Carls. And as you said, still plenty more testing stages for them to come. Tomorrow looks like one where the GC riders will be able to sit back and take things relatively easy, just mind each other, and maybe for the sprinters. The following day, of course, as you said, it's that uphill time trial, which again will see some large time gaps. I think Iran will be good there, but yeah, first concentrating on today, there's some confirmation of you. 44.3. Including the two riders from AG2R. Incidentally, we haven't seen Pozzovivo for quite some time. 2 minutes and 5 seconds to this group on your screen now, which includes, of course, Quintana, which is the big news so far in the last half an hour or so. Also, Hejerdal, of course, is here. He sits in 11th place on the general classification at 6:44. He's got Wout Poels just ahead of him on the GC at 12 seconds, who will, of course, be frantically, hopefully working behind for Uran. And then just in front of them, Kieselowski, who was in the breakaway and now seems to have slipped back into the group.
Well, he's going to hand over the rain jackets to the Vittoria car here. Oh, little shimmy. Please take great care. Gloves as well, which tells you just how much the weather is improving. It's remarkable. We had near blizzard conditions over the top of the Stelvio. The Gavia was wet and horrible as well, with sleet and hail. And now we are in the valleys. It's turned into light drizzle. They're getting off the rain gear and just allowing their other clothing to dry out as best it can in this light drizzle. They'll then head into a little dip, a bowl, and then for the final 21 kilometres it will be climbing.
Very high up the general classification. Roland is only in 8th place. I say only, but he's at 4 minutes and 47, so full 2 minutes behind Quintana. What he's missing, of course, despite all his efforts, Carlton, is a stage win. You know, yes, he wants to move up the general classification as well. He'd love to be in the top 5 overall, but I think primarily for him, a stage win really is the objective. So I wouldn't be surprised at all to see him kind of sit on Quintana as much as possible over this final 18Ks.
He knows Quintana needs the time. Roland needs the glory on an individual day as a primary target. You never know how this race will unfold, and today well, underscores that statement perfectly. There is rider Hejerdal, one of the bigger riders here, and just coming back on, and he's got to make the first downhill section down, which comes, what, 6.5 kilometres into this 22-kilometre climb. He's not that far off it right now, and that's where he'll regain his strength, and then he'll be minded to preserve something for the tough tests still to come.
Yeah, and you have to say that the favourite on the steep gradients is going to be Quintana, which is yet another reason for Roland, despite his amazing form so far in this Giro d'Italia, to conserve, as you said, as much energy as possible by sitting on the wheel. They're about to be joined, as expected almost, by rider Hejerdal, who also, of course, could make some big gains today. For you Canadian viewers, he currently sits 11th in the GC, 6 minutes and 44 seconds down. 2 minutes for him would mean moving into around about 8th or 9th place in the GC.
Rather unkindly, Quintana. The teams sometimes see these pictures on board their cars. They have amazing pieces of technology, and just as Hejerdal was getting back to them, Quintana just steps out of the saddle and injects a bit more pace. They're not that far from Dario Cataldo, which shows you just how capable these guys are on these climbs.
Well, we mentioned at the beginning of today's show that Quintana was still reported to be suffering from a high fever and an ear infection, but if that's to be believed, he's doing exceptionally well, Carlton, here.
Yeah.
Just about to come up to the front of the race is Quintana and his compatriot on the day, Pierre Roland. Be interesting to see just how long Cataldo is able to stay with them. He'll probably be able to stay there for a couple of kilometres, but certainly after that he's going to struggle once the steep section starts.
17.7 kilometres to go, and Roland and Quintana just roll together. Cataldo beds in and takes a little bit of respite. He's been out there for such a long time. There is the sight of the pink jersey. It's damage limitation, you might think. Cadel Evans is in there, and so is Pozzovivo.
Yeah, Pozzovivo is there. First I've seen of him today. I must have, I'm sure loads of people at home are going to tell me he's been there all along, and we've seen plenty of him, but
he's been
missed
there
him myself.
all along, and I've seen plenty of him. 17.4 kilometres to go, 1 minute and 55. And interesting to see team cars stopping and talking to commissaires. There'll be a lot more of that going on at the end of today. This is the group of disappointment, I think you might say, at least for now. 1 minute and 54 down, and now that is the distinct difference between Quintana and indeed Uran right now.
Yeah, so it's holding steady. It's been around 1 minute 40, minute 50, pretty much from the since the foot of the descent of the Stelvio. That group, as you might expect, whittling down dramatically. On the front, we have got Astana, of course, with Mick Rogers just behind. Number 7 there is Landa, who won a stage of the Giro del Trentino on the way into this race. So a handy rider to do the tempo setting. Uran will be, well, relieved in some ways that he's got these 2 riders to set the pace in front of him. He'd be really going up a blind alley almost if he was on his own. He'd have to go on the front and hope that some of the other riders shared in the workload. In fact, it's probably not going to be too long before those 2 do end up pulling to the side of the road. Job done for the day.
What a day to be a Colombian, what a day to be a cycling fan, and what a day to show what you've got. And that's exactly what Cadel Evans is doing, as far as many are concerned, me included. And here he comes, Cadel showing he's still alive, and he's very much part of the challenge in this race. Started the day off in 2nd place. He won't be there this evening, but he's still very much part of this race, and he could have his day. Let's not forget that. We've got an uphill time trial at Chimagrappa. We have a lot more climbing to be done as well, and they're having to push them away from the line so they don't just stall to a halt as more riders are expected. Ejidal and Roland were suspected to be the main players, and so it was that they were stepping up to the mark and delivering a fantastic day of entertainment to us at home. Quintana takes it ahead of Ejidal. Roland in 3rd place. Wilco Kelderman putting a couple of seconds between himself and Pozzovivo, 5 in fact. Aru also riding on. Micah Henao, Uran in 9th ahead of Cadel Evans. All the main players there on that screen set before you, but Quintana has taken the lead of this race. Overall standings look like this, with Nairo Quintana, our new leader on this Giro d'Italia, taking it on the day that mattered. It was always going to be this way, that this day was important, but look at the gap to Uran. 1 minute and 41. Evans is 3 minutes and 21 down. Pierre Roland 3 minutes and 26. It's a tight group with Micah on 3:28, Aru on 3:34, and 3:49 is Pozzovivo. The battle for podium places rages, but I think we may well have our winner. Quintana or Uran, take your choice. The calm after the storm. Destination Vittorio Veneto today, 208 kilometers. If you think this is going to be a calm day, then think again. Built for the breakaway riders, we await what will either be a sprint from a selection of breakers, or indeed a coming together and then a dash for the line. Serious in terms of climbing, and maybe a last chance for the fast men, but they've got to contend with the strong, the punchers, the breakaway riders. Destination Vittorio Veneto, but look at the profile. Not exactly shark's teeth, but then again, maybe a nasty nip from an old pike. There we are. And right at the very end, the Cadel Poggio, not named after Mr. Evans, but, well, you're going to have your climbing legs on, if only for 1.3 kilometres. 15 destined, surely, to have a more than large break. How would those wearing the jerseys cope with it? Well, probably, frankly, let them go. It was a fast old start as they left Sarnonico today. And indeed, when the flag finally waved, I should say. Time for a little chat amongst the Colombians, which seem to be ubiquitous, numerous, and indeed very effective in this race. Pink jersey passing from one Colombian to another, of course. The flag did drop, and then they just decided to go for it. A lot of ambition being displayed very early on. Tim Wellens was the man who lit it up, and in fact he eventually was to be part of an effective breakaway that started, and in fact it became 26 riders. Wellens taking that first categorized climb of the day. His avowed aim is to start building points and maybe just nick that jersey at the very end. He has been busy. Pirazzi and Thomas de Gent joining him in the fun on the first categorized climb. There are 3 today. The one that's going to cause most worry is the very last, the Cadel Poggio, not named after Evans. Around 15 to 20%, but only extending over 1.3 kilometres. Once they get over that, it still remains lumpy in the run into Vittorio. That's where the finish line is today. Quite a technical finish. It looks like this break, though, is going to have its fun. It's already well over 6 minutes, heading towards 7 minutes with 97.3 kilometres to go. It's wide and varied, full of talent, and a very determined Mr. Ellens who wants points for the mountains competition. Can he get some more? I'm Carlton Kirby, sitting alongside me is Daniel Lloyd. Dan, it's an effective group with some decent names on board.
Yeah, it's going to take us quite a lot of transmission before we go through all of the names in this race, but there on your graphic there is a rundown of who's here. Van Emden, Gatto, Vikinen, Os. Missed out a couple there. Bono, Wellens, De Gent, Back, Anton, Powers from Omega Pharma, Quick Step. 2 riders from that team coming up the road here, of course, De Gent as well. Malakani, Losada, Philip Dignan from Team Sky, Yeksha, a good bet for today's stage. McCarthy and Feline. We'll go through those guys in more detail in just a few moments' time.
Yeah, the pace today has been very, very high. Sort of the last real sort of respite day, I guess, until we get down to the serious business of climbing once again. It's the Palarotta tomorrow with some proper peaks and a mountaintop finish yet again. And there's the Cima Grappa, which is that climbers time trial. Then the Zoncolan, so no respite at all until we get to Trieste, the final day. So the sprinters, if they've got an interest, it's today. But unfortunately for the quick men like Buani, they're not in the break. And it looks like it might just succeed. Movistar leading over the pack on that first categorised climb today, and in absolutely no hurry at all.
No, time gap has gone up reasonably quickly since the break established itself, which it didn't do until kilometre 74. At least that was when the first of the riders went up the road. Of course, we had lots and lots of attacks over the opening kilometres of today's race, which started pretty much on a downhill, averaging 52 kilometres per hour. More than that even for the first hour of racing. First to actually get a decent gap, Van Emden and Thomas De Gent. They were soon joined by Boehm and Yeksha. Finally, Austin, and of course, many other riders. For Porti, there's the last guy to make it here. The Androni team will be very relieved about that, because of course it means they don't have to chase. Teams who have missed out include Colombia. We've also not got up, although they've only got the race. Orica Green Edge likewise, who only have 3 here. And in fact, I think that's everybody. Neri Satoli actually as well. 4 riders left in the race. Nobody in this breakaway.
Yeah, Neri Satoli will be aggrieved by that, I think you might say. Androni Giocattoli, they've been looking very jealously at the efficacy of Bardiani, who've had a couple of stage wins. Canola and Bataglin back-to-back on this race, stages 13 and 14. And I imagine Gianni Savio, who we seem to see every single day, called on Frapporti to go for it. Basically gave him the the bishop's wave, and away he went. Frapporti had to make it. He did make it, but I imagine he's going to take a little while to recover, because he was for an awful long way on his own as an intermediate rider. Colombia not up there. They'll be doing stuff in the mountains. Neri Satoli, probably the biggest disappointment would be for them. Garmin did a lot of work yesterday to help out rider Eschedal, who made it. They're short-handed as well, let's not forget. And the lightest team in terms of manpower out there is, of course, Orica Green Edge. They've got Sven Tuft, they have Michael Hepburn, and Ivan Santaromita, the Italian champion, who, as you heard at the top of the programme, if you were with us, actually won that jersey not very far from here, about 25 kilometres away, so he feels very much at home in this part of the world. But Santaromita is not in the break, and neither is anyone else from Orica Green Edge. This is a really beautiful part of the world. In fact, we stayed in a lovely hotel last night, and it is, how can I put this, it feels almost manicured down. It's like man controlling nature in this part of the world. There's an awful lot of ornamental stuff going on in terms of the agriculture and indeed the buildings, and just the way it's well kept. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, it's a really nice town, which I've never been to before, but certainly very neat and tidy. Some nice shops around, but the riders will have some fierce racing to do on the way into the finish today. As you said, it seems set that this break of 26 riders is going to make it towards the finish. No hurry at all in the group behind, and very hard to see any team which will be willing to expend a lot of energy in chasing a group of this size down, given the mountains and important GC stages which we've got to come over the next 3 days. So,
and didn't really dwell too much on time trialling, but is going to have to throw the grapple hook back into that style of riding if he is if he is going to go up the Cima Grappa in a way. If he's going to go up the Cima Grappa in a way that is going to reduce the gap between himself and Quintana.
Now, if we look back to the last time trial, of course, Iran managed to put quite a lot of time into his key rivals, including Nairo Quintana, but certainly a different couple of days' time. Predominantly uphill, which you have to say suits Nairo Quintana as much as anybody, really. So, again, hard to see him losing too much time on that day.
Just on board with Lampre now, who have got 2 riders in the break. I'll just try and listen in and see what's going on. Looks all nice and relaxed. I think that's basically the form of the day today. So, still looking at each other, Omega Pharma and Serge Pauwels is just itching to go up there and have a go as well. And Team Tinkoff Saxo also deciding that this is a fun game, and it's Petrov that's kicked off. He's got some good pace about him, and this really does look serious. And Pirazzi knows it as well and decides that he's going to chase on and try and join. Or is it Bohem? I think it's Pirazzi still. There is Vikinen up the road, and it's a 16-second gap now. And in fact, the pink jersey group have also picked up some pace along the way. Wet roads, that won't hamper De Gent at all in this drive for glory. 26.6 kilometres. He's going to be on a downhill section before you know it, and in fact they are already. This is that little run down toward that last categorised climb that we were talking about, Dan. We said it could be an action zone, and so it's proving. Yeah,
well, they'll want to keep that gap to a minimum coming towards this climb. It's 1.3 kilometres in length, to remind you, but it is particularly steep despite being short. So if they keep the gap down to a minimum, then the better climbers from this group, the likes of Gatto, Filin, Simon Yeksha, who we've seen trying to chase this man down, Thomas De Gent, might have a chance of jumping across. But as I said straight away, as soon as he attacked, he's not a man you want to let slip too far up the road. Big losers at the moment, Bardiani, of course. Nobody followed De Gent on his initial attack, and they've already started to pay for it. But a long way to go, Carlton. 26 kilometres just under for this man.
Yeah, he needs about 6 or 7 fellow breakers. Gatto's interested. I think watching out for him as well is Serge Pauwels, but De Gent is on his lonesome. And look at how it's breaking down, and look at the panic that's starting to set in amongst this group. Petrov has done a good job of chasing on Tinkoff Saxo, and it's getting a bit technical as well coming through some of these corners in the wet.
Yeah, it is. That's difficult.
Oh, 3 down. They're quickly up and on their feet, save for the Katusha rider who stayed on the deck, and I think it's Lusada. Bumps and bruises. He's just winded a little bit and slightly angry. Well, we said it was technical, said it was dangerous. They won't ease up in the break. They're going for glory here, and it's Vorganov that's on the deck as declared. It is indeed.
Well, looks like day over after all that for Vorganov. He's going to be doing very well now to get back onto this breakaway, given the categorised climb that still has to come. You can see how annoyed he is with himself. I mean, after all that work to get into a breakaway of 26, and he's in still with a chance of stage victory, and then all of a sudden it just goes out the window. So he's still got this man in front. 16 seconds, still the lead being given by Race Radio. Back to the next group, still the Tinkoff Saxo rider Petrov on the front from what we can see.
Here we go, coming in. Oh, and lost it all on his lonesome as well. I think that may well have been a little bit of moisture on the road. I'm not talking about wet, I'm talking about a greasy surface, something along those lines.
Great work from Igor Anton and the other rider from Bardiani there to stay upright. The initial reaction when you see somebody crash in front of you is, of course, to grab the brakes. The first thing that happens when you do that on a wet corner when you're banked over is that you just completely slide, the bike slides out from underneath you, and that's what we saw happen to a couple of the other riders there after Vorganov crashed. De Gent's looking pretty confident though, Carlton, around these wet corners. wouldn't be surprised if it is pretty slippy out there if they haven't had too much rain over the last few days. But good for De Gent, of course, keeping upright at this moment in time, but also good that he hasn't been looking behind him too much. That can slow you down if you're constantly looking at the gap you've got to the next group.
I think he's been warned about the surface. If it's slippy further back down the road behind you, likely to be so here, and this looks like a reasonably new surface, which is not exactly what you want when the drizzle is light.
Well, to remind you then, the final categorised climb of the day peaks at exactly 20 k's to go. It's 1.3 k's long, so still a couple of k's for Thomas De Gent before he gets to this final major obstacle of the day. It then descends down for a few kilometres. There's another rise which leads them to 10 k's to go, and then it's reasonably flat from there to the finish.
It's Pirazzi.
Yeah, Pirazzi, the strongest rider at the moment, proving to be on this climb. It was obvious he was going to go. We see him attack so much on the climbs, but nobody else able to follow him. I'm a little bit surprised about that. I thought the likes of Gesca, maybe Gatto as well, Feline in particular, would be able to stick with Pirazzi on a short, sharp climb like they're dealing with at the moment.
Well, how many from this break will come together and form a sub-breakaway? Gesca is kicked off again. He's decided to go for it. Tim Ellens is also putting something into this and dragging Gatto into the party as well. From Cannondale, that the very long view, this tight in. And right now, this man is having his fun. He's dancing on the pedals and doing a terrific job. It's only category 4, but it's a proper punch, this, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't think the gap back to this man is particularly big now. The gap we got on the way into the climb, 30 seconds. Pirazzi's put a big effort in. He's gone into the red. He'll want to catch De Gent over the top if he possibly can, because if he doesn't, it's hard to see the Italian rider managing to match this man on the following downhill. We saw De Gent was extremely confident around the corners. He's coming up towards the top of this climb now, Carlton, and if he looks behind him, I think he's going to see that he's still got a half-decent gap over Pirazzi, the next man on the road.
I think he'll certainly take the climb. It's what he's got left in his legs for the run-in, and check this out. Gesca from Team Giant Shimano is also there, and Vellens at the moment is pacing Gatto with a stripe down his back in the green. That's from Cannondale, and two riders, of course, as well from Bardiani, who don't want to be left out, Bohème and Canola.
Yeah, that's the advantage they've got. Pirazzi is, of course, second on the road. If they manage to get their other two riders into a group behind, you've got a group of, say, 6 or 7 with 3 from Bardiani, then you've got to say that they need to put a big effort into chasing. He had slightly further to go on this climb than I imagined, Carlton, or than I saw before. 75 metres to go now for this man, Thomas De Gent, to get over the last categorised climb of the day. From then, it's only a small rise, and here comes Pirazzi, Carlton. He's just coming up to the wheel of the Belgian.
Oh, they're going to be a great pairing. They're going to go over the top. De Gent's going to take this. Pirazzi's going to stick with him. Who they're going to draw out, I think it's going to be Gesca and Gatto as well. There's a prediction for you. We'll see how it pans on this little descent and then the run-in.
Well, Pirazzi going over the top, but not far behind as some of the rest of the riders. Gatto, one of the other riders there from Bardiani. Is that Canola? Is it Bohème? They're all up there towards the top, and Carlton, this splitting up of the group, I think, is going to help them. They'll all be doing their own chasing. They won't be looking around and looking for other people to do all of the work. Unfortunately for Serge Powers, he's only just come over the top now. I thought he'd be able to keep up with a few of those climbers and be able to have 2 towards the front. Philip Dagnan as well, a great climb, and you can just see the different type of effort that a short climb of 1.3 metres is in comparison to the long mountains which we've been over.
Here is that run through the final KOM of today. De Gent takes it ahead of Pirazzi with Gatto chasing on. I can tell you that Fabio Feline as well from Trek Factory Racing has also given a big old kick. If this isn't selective, it may well just tire out a few legs and then allow a sub-escape later on. But right now, it is De Gent and Pirazzi who've gone for it, and Koenigo wants to be part of this.
Yeah, it's all over the road. The thing that you've got to say, though, with De Gent, when you're on your own, you just go at 100% of what you feel you can go out for the duration you've got still to the finish line. As soon as you've got somebody with you, the likes of Pirazzi, then you can start to look at each other, and that's when things start to slow down, and we could see some other riders coming back to the front to form a slightly bigger group. But it's certainly whittled down, Carlton. We saw Daniel Oss towards the back, and they're the main bunch coming through the crash site of Borgenhoff, and we saw there that they got warning of the crash that preceded them from the breakaway group. That's why the Movistar riders were telling everyone to just calm down on the way into this roundabout, and they're all through that safe and sound.
Thank heaven for that. The gap was tumbling down towards the 9-minute mark. It's now back out to 10 minutes and 47, courtesy of the attack that's been put in by De Gent, joined by Perazzi on the climb. De Gent crested it and took the 3 points only for the category 4, and indeed the pack are still very much together, and indeed this gap will be drifting out to beyond 11 minutes before you know it. 18.5 kilometres to go until they get into town and the finish line. It is drying. We had a little bit of rain earlier on. That rain caused a crash incident which the peloton were wary of, but look at what's happened with the break. It was 26 riders and it is all over the place at the moment. They've been on the road, they've tasted the tarmac, and so they'll be wary of this descent, but they're on it at the moment, and it's quite a long one as well. And in fact, by the end of it, there will be just about 11 kilometres to go when they start climbing again. Oh, they are wary and they're being found again. That is Geschke, I think, that's taken a tumble. He's back on his bike. Oh, danger, and warning bells, alarms going off all over the place, and look at the respect that the peloton are giving this road right now.
Well, they can assure we're going to get the cat and mouse. You can already see it, Carlton. They can't afford to do too much. The chase is still on behind. Last time gap we got is 27 seconds. Normally unclosable, but if you do start to look around each other, then it can come down very quickly. There, Tim Vellen's deciding to keep the pace slightly higher. He's probably feeling confident out of this group. It's going to be so interesting, this sprint. Oh, and they're starting to look at each other behind as well. They are.
Perazzi and De Gent decide to have their own private battle, and all of a sudden Monteguti is allowed to go up the road. He's talking to Jay McCartney, saying, come on, let's do this together. We can beat this trio up if we go alone. And right now, going alone and out of the grab, I think that's Lars Bak who's just kicking off. That's of no interest at all. Meanwhile, back out up front, we need to go with 2.6 to go, and there it is. Vellen's at the rear of this quintet at the moment. Just in front of him is the green of Perazzi. Then we have AG2 on the Mondial with Monteguti. This is the finish line. We've got a lot of electrical storm activity in the area. It hasn't burst here, but now bursting off the front goes Perazzi. Chasing in, down goes Monteguti. Just latching onto the wheel is Tim Vellen's in the red. Staying cool is Jay McCarthy. It could be a massive day for him. And of course we have Thomas De Gent, who started all this off. There's the pack almost 14 minutes down, but it's about these last 2 kilometres now, and the man with the most interest of keeping pace up, because he knows he's got something extra still in the bank, is Vellen's in the red here. Well, we've got the contrast between riders who want to keep this group together and riders who aren't confident in their sprint if it does stay together as a 5-man. We've seen attacks from Perazzi, we've seen attacks from Thomas De Gent. Those seem like the guys that don't want to come to the finish with these other riders in the front group. Tim Vellen's, well, he's been rolling through and off. Monteguti, to me, seems like the man who's put in the most effort and might well pay for that when it comes towards the finish. Francis Tiger and Laban, just a part of this group with Daniel as well. They are a chasing group. It's going to be minor points for them, and in fact most of the rest of the original breakaway, which did number 26, don't forget, it burst apart, was blown apart after attacks on the final climb, in fact the penultimate climb, which wasn't categorized, and it has left us with this 5 riders going for it. 1600 meters to go. They'll be coming underneath the Flamme Rouge, and then the crucial part of the day, about 600 meters in fact, is where it gets technical. Well, Thomas De Gent rolling through, but nobody following the wheel of the Belgian. One Belgian in this group. We've got Malacani as well, Italian. Of course, Perazzi, Italian, Jay McCarthy, and then finally at the back there we've got Tim Vellen, who came so close, and another attack from Perazzi, but Malacani is the Monteguti. Monteguti is trying to go with him, and it looks like it might stick. Perazzi's gone very long, and if they let this go for too long, he's going to hit the Flamme Rouge on its own. Nobody else wants to pick up the chasing duty. Still, Wellens believes that he's got this. Thomas De Gent is also there, just goes underneath that banner. It's all too late, is it? And now the chase begins, and Vellen's got no choice but to go for this. I think this is a huge misjudgment. He goes over to one side of the road, says to De Gent, go on, you go for it. No, says De Gent, I'm not going to. If you want to pick this up, you're the danger man. But right now, Perazzi has done exactly what he needs to do. Takes the corner. He's going to take the next one. He's got 450 metres. Have they misjudged this? I think they have, Carlton. He's locked behind him with the penultimate corner. He's got a slight right. Has anybody got anything left in the legs to jump across? Nobody, again, wants to do the work on the front. Thomas De Gent sails through Perazzi. Thomas De Gent, USA, is the man that's best minded to go for it, I think. 450 metres. Perazzi said it's stalled out on a climb. I think they forgot about the ramp into that last corner. It's That arrow straight to the line right now, and it's all about who can catch Pirazzi, and I don't think anybody can. I think Bardiani are going to take a third stage victory. They're picking it up, but it's all too late. Jay McCarthy is a quick man, but he's not going to be quick enough to stop it. Oh, they've blown it, and he's helped himself. The Pirate has struck. What a result that was, and what an amazing Giro this has been for Bardiani. Wow, how about that?
Well, I said he was the guy that was least likely to win from a sprint. He knew that, he made an attack, judged it perfectly, and here's the rest of the group scrapping for 6th place along the line. Finnish champion Vaikkonen looks like he's about to get that. Oh, he must know there's somebody ahead.
I don't know whether he does. There we are. But I can tell you, the man who was ahead and head and shoulders above the rest, he wears no eye patch, but today he was a pirate. Aptly named, Pirazzi has helped himself. Cutlass between his teeth, he went for it early, and he's given Bardiani a third win on this Giro d'Italia. App went for it. It was a big ramp, and he had time to celebrate. What about that? Well, the chase was on at this point. Kent, well, it was hell for leather at this point. You just couldn't hold anything back. You just had to go for it. Jay McCarthy came round in the yellow. It was all too late, though. Valens had done so much work today, also in the red. I think really he will feel the most aggrieved by this. Pirazzi had some fabulous pace at the right moment. He rode that climb, and then he said, this was mine. And that's what I think about the rest of my breakaway compadres. Safe with teammates, obviously. Third win, stage-wise, for Bardiani. And this is how they finished. Pirazzi taking it ahead of Tim Valens, who left it too late in that very select group of breakaway riders. Jay McCarthy in 3rd place ahead of Thomas de Gent. Welcome to stage 18 of the Giro d'Italia. Time running out if you want to move anywhere in the general classification. Quintana, well, looking to underscore, I guess, his credentials with a terrific day today in prospect. 3 mighty climbs, over 171 kilometres to be dealt with today. Weather-wise, it's a little bit misty, virtually no wind, incidentally. It's listed, as you can see, at 13 kilometres per hour, but it's absolutely non-existent at the finish line today. Humidity 83%, partly cloudy with a possibility of rain. It sounds very, very familiar. In fact, the course that we're running today will be familiar to some, and certainly in profile it looks very much like some we've seen before. This is the loop that we're doing today, destination Panarotta. 2 climbs to be dealt with before we get to the uphill finish at the end of 171 kilometres. San Pellegrino is the first. It's a long ascent and then a long intermediate link before we get to the red bus, and then it is up the Panarotta to finish. Blue jersey. It is, of course, the general classification that this is all about, and battles for podium places are going to be rolling one after the other out there. 7 riders from positions 3 to 9, so from Cadel Evans all the way down to Ryder Ejderdahl, separated by 55 seconds coming into the start of today. And that means that there is very much that run, well, 3rd place up for grabs. Uran looks installed in 2nd, and we're still waiting to find who might couple Quintana. It was a busy start because so many wanted to make the break. They're still rolling with the punches on the foot as we begin the climb, or enter into the climb of the San Pellegrino today. There is the finish line. Panarotta is where they are all heading, and we're just waiting to pick up the race, which didn't start until around about 50 that is, minutes ago. Here we are, live coverage out on course. The rain has meant that some of the gullies, rivulets and indeed waterfalls are busy once again. 134.3 kilometres still to be dealt with today, and they are indeed just entering the official start of the San Pellegrino climb. So let's check out where we are. You'll see the map gradually going pink, and in fact this is the declared start zone of the San Pellegrino, despite the fact, Dan Lloyd, that they've already done plenty of climbing.
Yeah, it's been a gradual climb right from the gun today. Nothing that's going to worry these riders too much, but there's been some very, very high speeds. Once again, the entire peloton almost wanting to get into the breakaway. Interesting to see that the first attack of the day came from Ivan Basso. Not something I've seen much before, and in fact, I dare to say it's perhaps the first time he's ever done that in a race since being professional. Probably wrong, but there we go.
Yes, well, we'll ask him at the end of the day. This is what we're dealing with. Plenty of veils, as you can see, but also travails. There is Pellegrino, our first climb. Then we've got a long linking section of 55 kilometres, rolling up and down, you understand, before we start climbing properly once again, albeit with a large section of little downhill. Up the red bus or Redebus, and then we'll be down on a descent of 32 kilometres into the final climb, the Panarotta today, which is the business end, I guess you might say, particularly for the GC boys, and indeed whether it's all back together or not. The car's going extraordinarily slowly through this tunnel, as you can see. Safety to the fore. Plenty of these tunnels actually dotted around on the mountainside, and it's remarkable. Any single one of them, I guess, in the United Kingdom, for example, would be a famous tunnel, but there are hundreds of them. We pick them up as they emerge from the tunnel. It looks down like we are starting to settle into what is an accepted breakaway, albeit with a narrow margin for now.
Well, they're just waiting for the peloton behind to sit up, which they haven't done just yet. Basso is in here. Interesting to see. He's obviously determined to get into the breakaway. Also Cataldo, who's one of the first riders to go across, but this early breakaway or early attacks is far from over yet, Carlton. I think we're going to see plenty more before we come up to the top of the San Pellegrino.
132.9 kilometres of today remaining. We're going to be peaking at the top today of what is the opening climb, which is listed at 18.5 kilometres. 6.2% is the average gradient. It's now 15% maximum as well that they will be enjoying along the way.
It looks like we've got Tim Wellens in there as well from Lotto Bellaso, one of the dangers to Arredondo in the King of the Mountains competition. Yesterday's breakaway rider, Thomas de Ghent, also appears to be in there. There's Michael Hepburn, number 153, one of only two riders left in the race for the Orica Green Edge team after Ivan Santaromita didn't start this morning, suffering from fever. Also the same thing for Diego Ulissi, who's the first rider from the Lamprey team to pull out from the race. So this morning starting with around 158 riders, I think it was.
Yes, it's a shame that the attrition rate has picked up. Basso's really churning it today. Not least Orica Green Edge. Let's just dwell on those for a moment. They've only got two riders left in this race. It's Santaromita pulling out, we understand, with a fever.
Could save his and Cannondale's race if he managed to get up here and go for the stage victory.
Yeah, they've not had fun. Viviani, notably, I guess, missing out again and again and again when it came to the sprints. And I think that was their lineup, really. All right, they had Rato and, of course, Ivan Basso. And Oscar Gatto was having some fun yesterday. I think he thought that, or he had a belief that it was a possibility. Didn't quite work out for him, unfortunately, Dan. But yeah, they're going to go away pretty empty-handed for a team that's well-funded and looked strong on paper when they arrived.
Yeah, pretty much an Italian team as well, Carlson. Of course, they rose from the ashes of the Liquigas team, which had been around for a long time. In fact, still got the same colours that they used to have. Mick Rogers, they're unhappy with the Camera motorbike, who's preventing him from going back to the team car or getting access to the team car, which he wants. Not taking any notice of him, though, for quite some time.
Yeah, finally realising what he was on about. Busy filming him, drawing out, ascribing us a hoop, and basically not realising that it bloody didn't get any ruder, to be honest. Pirazzi yesterday, he did offer up an opinion at the line. using sign language, which not overly to be encouraged, especially when there's kids watching, to be honest. But he was sending a message to the press, who have been quite busy attacking him in terms of his abilities strategy-wise. Now, he does seem to set off like a skyrocket, and things about rockets is they generally tend to crash to earth. And he's done that on a number of occasions, and the press have had a go at him about it, and finally it worked.
Exactly. I mean, I've criticised him myself, I think, Carl, in the past. And, you know, I don't think he does ride necessarily in the most intelligent way. Certainly on some climbs, we see him accelerate at a ridiculous speed, and of course you're going to pay for that. And you know, but it's interesting to watch in many ways. We get bored with the likes of Team Sky when they ride at a monotonous but very high pace in the front and just show riders out. It means there's no attacking at all, but at the same time, sometimes you can feel like he could potentially get a little bit more out of himself than he does. But he's proven all of them wrong yesterday by taking that stage win. Attacked at just the right time towards the finish. There was enough looking around from the other riders, and poor old Jay McCarthy, the young rider from Tinkoff Saxo, well, what another race it would have been again for the Australians there. He came, of course, very close to stage victory, as did Vaikkonen, the Finnish champion, thinking that he'd crossed the line in first place. I actually thought that he was taking the mickey out of Puzzato, who'd crossed the line in second place at Roma Maxima last year. But in fact, he tweeted afterwards that there's always got to be a clown, and today it was me. So he actually did think he'd won the race, unfortunately for him.
Bless him. Yes, taking the Finnish flag to the finish, but unfortunately others had finished first. Sounds like a tongue twister. Getting your mind around today as it meanders up and down. Basso looks to be finding his limit. I don't know whether he's plumbing it or plumbing the depths, to be honest, but we'll find out later, I guess. 121 still to go. That's a long distance, Dan. It's a big day. It
is a big day. Pretty much all mountainous terrain, very little flat for them to be dealing with. Once they go over the San Pellegrino, where they'll be at 1,918 metres, they'll have about 117 k's to go, if I've calculated properly, which means that they're quite close to the top. I'm going to have to double check that actually, because it seems like they're not quite that close to the top. Anyway, regardless of that, they'll have a descent down to 1,100 metres, and then there's some rolling terrain through the intermediate sprint. The feed zone comes at 89 kilometres through the race, and then they've got a second category climb, which you see on your screens up the Redibus, and then finally another downhill before this big climb up towards the finish, the biggest and hardest test of the day, coming right at the end of the stage.
We're not that far from the first peak, and they're starting to churn it a bit, as you can see. Arredondo is glad that others have picked this up. I think he's basically called for help, because they were all very much riding on his wheel for a while. It crests in just about 6 kilometres time. In fact, they're getting very close to that. There we are. In fact, no, it's even nearer than that. I do beg your pardon. 2.5 kilometres they will be over the top. In fact, I've got that wrong as well. It's 4.
4.5.
Yeah. There we are. Please forgive us. We're tiring as much as they are, I guess. We'll try and keep it sensible. Rain gear, putting it on a climb is a hard thing. So basically, you just save yourselves while you get wetter and wetter until you get to a little flatter part, a little ramplet, and then you can get back on with it. But it is raining yet again. Cold has been a huge issue apart from anything else, Dan. If you have the skills, that's one thing. But if you haven't got the dress for the day, that's another.
Oh, well, all of the riders will have rain bags in the back of their car, at the back of their team car. In fact, they'll have 2 rain bags, one in the first team car, one in the second. Why, I hear you ask?
Why, Dan?
Each team has 2 team cars that follow the race, and so if you end up in the breakaway, well, your second team car will come up to you. So the likes of Basso here and the guys in the front group, they will have their second team car come up to support them with gels, wheels, you know, if they need anything from the second bike. And in fact, what will happen once the breakaway is established, the spare bike that's on the front of the first car, well, they'll stop on the side of the road, hand it over to the second team car so that they can come up with the correct bike. But then that means, of course, that they've got spare clothing should they be in the breakaway, or even if they're in the main group.
So we have about 4 kilometres to go until the top of the San Pellegrino. Apologies for any confusion earlier on. This is your select group, and as you can see right at the front, selecting P1 right now is Arredondo. Tim Bellens close at hand. He wants to get maximum points out of this, and he'll race Arredondo for the crest. I am absolutely certain. That competition is still alive, but the life is being choked out of it, I guess, by the performance of Arredondo. He's made sure he got some lesser climbs at the beginning and almost snuck into that jersey, I think you might say. Now he wants it for himself, and indeed he wants a Colombian lockout overall. Not going to get it in the sprints, but they may well get it overall. The youth, of course, all going to Quintana. Arredondo wants the blue. And there is the Colombian champion, who's also here, along with the sports minister. It's busy if you're a Colombian.
It certainly is, yeah. Gaps back to these guys. Last we heard on race radio was 55 seconds, which is why you saw the team cars on the side of the road. They're only allowed in gaps if they're more than a minute in general. Basso pressing on, Rabatini, of course, up there with him.
120 to go. Time to check out exactly where we are on what is a real nasty day of climbing yet again, and we're just hoping that the rain stays away. For the time being, it's kind of lingering around. Stage 18, we're looking at the first of the day's tests. Our breakaway just approaching the top. In fact, they're closer than that map suggests. They'll be going over in around 3.5 kilometers time. The map was indicating about 15k away, which is incorrect. So they'll be going over the top. Then there is a long section of downhill and meandering flat, 55 kilometers that they will enjoy over the crest. That's why Basso's going for this, because he knows he's capable of taking the 9.5% second climb, which is category 2, which they will start the ascent of that after 55 kilometers of moderate downhill and indeed flatland running. And so all of these guys can find something back in the legs, and they've got to believe that they can go long today.
Well, it's going to be a very strong group once, if Basso and Rabatini make it up here as well. What have we got here now? It's around about 11 riders, I think. Thomas de Gent, who was in yesterday's breakaway, doing well, but just struggling slightly to hang on to the coattails of the group. But we saw how he was descending yesterday, Carlton, on those small wet descents, and even if he is a few seconds off the back of this group, I don't think he's going to have too much trouble in regaining contact on the descent. Same perhaps couldn't be said for Basso, not the best descender in the world, particularly in the wet, so he'll be doing his absolute best to get into contact with this group before they go over the crest.
Yeah, he might well just hang on to the coattails a bit as they go down and use somebody that he trusts as a guide. Arredondo at the moment is looks like he's being helped out by Sella of Androni Giocattoli as part of 2 men from that team who are here. They really need something as well if they're going to keep a smile on Gianni Savio's face. We saw him looking very papal over the last or the opening few stages. He's disappeared from our screens. I don't think he really wants to be there, especially as Bardiani and, well, their team chief Roberto Roberberri probably have more rights to ask to be on screen, frankly, because they've done a proper job. 119.7. San Pellegrino is where we are headed. And the clouds, as you can see, hanging around. Well, Vaikinen's got his followers. In fact, as we came up, there was plenty of Colombians knocking around, and they sort of wandering around with big smiles on their faces, very much trying to engage with everyone, because I think they're getting used to being slapped on the back and saying, well done, you're doing a great job. So they're wandering around in the Colombian flag, looking for yet more acknowledgement of their success in this race. And well, we don't give it grudgingly, we give it willingly, because they've done an amazing job. 119.6, and it really is a proper grind, particularly at the top. They've been through the 15% zone, Dan, and now it's easing ever so slightly, and making his move is Arredondo. Just a change of rhythm, and away he goes for those points. Yeah,
not surprised he's keeping the pressure on, because he's obviously the better climber in comparison to Tim Bellens, who's closest to him out of this group in that mountains competition. So he won't want to leave it to a plain old sprint over the final 200 metres of the climb to get those points. He's trying to press on to make sure that Wellens is nowhere near him, and I'm sure afterwards he'll wait for the group. In the distance there, on this replay, you can see the red jersey of Katusha. That is Lasada finally making it up towards this group, forming 12, and then we've got 2, of course, still 38 seconds behind this group, so they're closing in, so we could have a group, Carlton, of 14 by the looks of things.
Yeah, we got a front puncture by the look as well, unfortunately, for one of our friends from Katusha, just trying to get an idea as the camera struggles to focus.
Paolini.
There we are. It's
Well,
Paolini.
it looked like he had some kind of problem which he wanted to sort out, so he just sprinted ahead of the group so that he could sort it out on the side of the road and then come back on and regain contact straight away.
Yeah, I just don't think the wheel was set properly dead centre. He just, as you saw, just lifted the handlebars and banged it down again just to make sure that the message was through to the machine. Meanwhile, we're looking at Bataglin. There he is. Stage winner on stage 14. They have just had a party with us, haven't they, these guys in pale green. It's been great to see.
Yeah, one of two teams in this race using Cipollini bikes along with Neri Sotoli. So Cipollini investing a lot in terms of equipment into those two Italian teams, and he's been hanging around the race actually the last few days. In fact, I dare say that he's still more popular even than Nairo Quintana when he's walking around the podium area. Movistar working on the front, and I'm sure it won't be too long before we see Europcar also trying to go for this, because of course they haven't got a stage win yet with Roland. He was looking exceedingly strong the other day, but said that he had a hunger flat, just didn't quite eat and drink enough throughout the stage to Val Martello over the Stelvio, etc., which is why in the end he wasn't able to fight for victory against Quintana, and of course the great ride from Hegedal. But Movistar doing the most controlling, of course, in the front at the moment, and Philip Dagden, the Irish rider from Team Sky, has made his way across to Arredondo.
Look at that. Are you taking the point time after the jersey? He says, do you want to come and help out? And the shake of the head says, no, you enjoy it. I'm just here for the ride.
Round.
We're at the Passo San Pellegrino. It's a beautiful part of the world. They have a well-known mineral water that comes from this locale. And that fresh mountain water is also joined by hot springs, which produces a whole load of different villages that offer therms. Although our swimming pool at our particular hotel was stone cold last night. Yes, the only thing that was warm was the dish they presented us with. It wasn't the finest, let me just put it that way. So just in case you're thinking that it's always absolutely magnificent in terms of our cuisine, no, easy to diet last night. Tell you that much. 117.9 kilometers to go, and we have a rejoindement with, I don't know why I'm going French, there is regroupamenti with Basso, just doing a good job to get over with Rabotini, who might be a threat today. 117.8, and still beating out a rhythm. I think, Dan, that's possibly what the character of the day is going to be. We've said that rhythmic may well be the way to go when you get to the final climb, and I'm looking forward to a good performance from our good friend Ryder Hegedal, who has started to shine very brightly in this race.
Oh, indeed. We kind of always expected him to go best in the final week of racing. And I think we're going to see plenty more of him today. It's a fairly regular climb. I think it's one which will suit him, and I think given the fatigue amongst some of the other riders, he could start to really profit. And you've mentioned already at the start of the programme, Carlton, that there's only 55 seconds between Ryder Hegedal in 9th place on GC and Cadel Evans, who sits in 3rd place, provisionally of course, on the podium. Meanwhile, at the back of the race, some of the sprinters still here starting to struggle, as you might expect, but they'll do their best to get back on the descent. That was Tyler Farrar of Garmin Sharp, who you saw on your screens, along with Sebastian Chavanel, teammate of Nasser Bouhanni from FDJ.
We have thinned down as far as sprinters are concerned. Tyler Farrar came into this race and was actually talking himself up within his own team, incidentally, saying, look, I feel absolutely great, lead me out and I'll do the job. Didn't quite work out for Tyler, unfortunately, and it seems to be a characteristic of this part of his career. Just lost some top-end speed. Yeah, I know conditions have not been absolutely perfect. You never know, when we get to Trieste, he might well be one of those who's just saved something from the climbs. I know that Bouhanni is not going to cede that red jersey, but he might just drop one stage. And Trieste offers a fantastic opportunity for Farrar and the sprinters that do remain, who haven't basically been ill and, or indeed taken too much road rash, or indeed left too much behind on the climbs. He does climb reasonably well, Tyler Farrar, although he seems to be struggling today. There are days where he can regain that strength, so don't count him out just yet. Thanks to everybody who's been in on Twitter. We open up the lines for you today, so if you'd like to join us in the conversation, it is at Carlton Kirby, CarltonKirby, or indeed at Daniel Lloyd 1, DANIELLLOYD, and then the number 1. Wellens has set off. It looks like we've got a Yeti on a bike. I think he needs hairier legs if he's going to complete the look. Meanwhile, out front, Arredondo has got a passenger in the form of Daignan, the Irishman who's staying with him. He was asked, would you like to come and help out? The shake of the head told Arredondo that he's going to have to spin his little legs up as good as he possibly can. He has a very peculiar physique, does Arredondo. He's very long of torso and short of limb. Suits him though for this.
Well, his torso's not that long.
Wait till you see him on the podium later on. You'll get the gig. Right now, it looks like he is heading for blue. He's wearing it at the moment, and he has a good margin in this competition down. He's about to add to that significantly.
He will do, yeah. Good job for him that it's Daignan here and not teammate Cataldo. Cataldo's sitting in 4th place on the classification for the mountains on 62 points. But yeah, this climb here could almost draw to a conclusion our mountains competition for this year. 32 points on offer for him as he goes over the top of the line, if Daignan doesn't outsprint him.
Yeah, I'm just wondering whether Daignan is actually up there to work for his teammate who's still alive in this competition. It'd be quite nasty if he does nick it at the line. He looks like he's tempted.
He should do it just to annoy him. Just to see what happens. Go on.
Nah, hasn't the heart to break it. Boring. Yeah. We jest, of course. It's fantastic that Arredondo has been so animated again and again in the climbs, and you know he holds that jersey at the moment by right, and I think it's going to be his.
Well, Cataldo's determined to go for some points. He'll be closely followed by Tim Vellens, who doesn't seem to have the zip to close down the Team Sky Rider. So 3rd place across the top looks set to go to Cataldo, so he'll pick up 14 extra points in his classification. Vellens in 4th, an extra 10 for him, so he moves up to 73 points. However, Cataldo leapfrogs him into 3rd place on that classification.
Plenty of MTN Quebec jerseys on display. They're not here, but they have got an invite, incidentally, for the Vuelta Tour of Spain, so you'll be seeing them on a Grand Tour later on this season. There we are, 32 points going to Arredondo. He'll take that, and we'll have the general classification, or the overall classification for the blue jersey competition for you in just a moment, once that has been assembled.
Do you want it now?
Go on then.
In 1st place on the mountains classification, of course, Arredondo, 127 points. Now up to 2nd, Cataldo with 76. In 3rd place on 73 is Tim Vellens, and then dropping down from 2nd to 4th is Chalapud, still on 69 points.
Catherine Wharton says, enjoying your commentary voice from New Zealand. Not quite dedicated enough to get up and watch live from the very start. Come on, Cathy, for goodness sake.
Beat Quintana, so if he's on great form, that's not going to be an easy task. But I just wonder how long it will be before perhaps we start to see AG2R and Europcar put a man or two on the front of the bunch to control things, so that they're also in with a chance not only of moving up the general classification or staying where they are, but also of going for the stage win if they're on a great day.
Downhill skills to the fore then. Ivan Basso has made it over to the group. It could be a Basso kind of day, I guess, if he really does turn the clock back ever so slightly. Twice a winner, of course, of this race. He's getting on a bit now, 36 years of age, but well, we've seen older winners, of course. Minded to mention Chris Horner, naturally enough. But 110 kilometres to go, and it's not the most technical downhill, and that will help Basso.
Yeah, it's a good wide road. It seems to be the order of the day, actually. We've already been describing how good this road is up to the finish line. I have ridden over the San Pellegrino myself, actually, last year on a preview for one of the stages, because we also went over this climb in last year's race. Can't remember exactly which stage it was, but it is a good wide road. It's a good descent. It was very cold and snowing when I did it, so my memory's not quite so good as they've got things today, although it is of course raining, as you can see on your screen. Still okay here at the finish line, clouding over somewhat from when we came up here earlier, but hopefully it will remain dry for them. But yet again, I think for something like the 14th stage out of 18, they're having to deal with some water coming out of the sky.
Yes, and ominous black clouds as well at the finish line. The Passo San Pellegrino is absolutely beautiful, by the way. It really is wide, as wide as the road. I guess the joy of being a pro cyclist is just knowing that you have a closed road and you can enjoy all of it. A wider ribbon of tarmac belongs to you, essentially. And it's a lovely run, this, isn't it?
Does make such a big difference, not only descending, but even when you're climbing. If you've got a very, very smooth road, it just feels so much better. Of course, these road bikes are pretty rigid and with high pressure tyres as well. Well, Basso's going down pretty well, Carlton, actually. I'll take it back. He's not normally the best descender in my opinion, but seems to be pressing on today.
See the motorcycle just getting in the way of the descent. I think they're being told off right now, so you don't have to start throwing things at your TV screens. It does worry me when they get quite close to the riders here as well. Incidentally, we're talking about a smooth rolling surface. It still has a proper degree of grip, and so I'm not really expecting to see too many skitter. However, that is not the best way to manage your bike, unless you're extremely brave and very, very capable. Don't try that at home. It's very much the Sagan way of descending, it seems. Looking at, it says the back of the peloton, but you can ask your own questions about that. Certainly not. 107.6 kilometres to go, and a lot of running still on this race, and a lot of it downhill. This is going to be a high speed, sort of free energy push, and as you can see, Ivan Basso more than happy because it is reasonably straight today, and yeah, the corners when they come are very well marshalled and indeed not too focused, so no real hairpins to be dealt with. As you can see, it's wide enough for you to smooth out many of these bends down, which is good stuff. Good news for these guys.
He's not hanging about, Basso, today. Obviously determined to give himself a good chance of stage victory, and I think it's going to be a closely fought affair amongst these guys if they do manage to make it towards the finish with enough of a gap over the main peloton behind. They've caught Arredondo, as you can see, so we've now got our group. I think it's 14 riders now, Carlton, is it? Basso up there. Here we get confirmation of who is in the front group. Might be a good time to go through some of the riders anyway. Pellizotti and Sella here for Androni. Pellizotti has been third overall in this race before in 2009. Former Italian champion, suspended for doping, or not actually, sorry, suspended for violations of the biological passport by the UCI. Complicated affair, but they look at variations in blood values, and if they're too far outside of certain parameters, then they decide that you've been manipulating your blood in one way or another. Either way, he was suspended for some time because that has come back, like many of those guys do, to the Androni team. Sella, likewise, suspended for doping after winning, I think, 3 or 4 stages a few years ago. Nowhere near back to the best, or back to the level that he was at then. Unsurprisingly, I think you might say, in many ways. Zardini is here from Bardiani, a young rider. Won a stage recently of the Giro del Trentino after attacking on a mountaintop finish, some way from the mountaintop itself, managing to hold off the rest of the peloton behind. That race, of course, won overall by Cadel Evans. Martin Kaiser, I have to be honest, I don't know too much about this rider from the Belkin team, another young guy. Climbing obviously very, very well today. I had him more down as a kind of baroudeur, or a guy that's good on rolling terrain but not quite so good in the mountains. I shall look him up and give you some more information soon. Duarte, we've been talking about right from the very beginning of the race. Another one of the Colombians who came here with high hopes of the general classification. A crash put pay to that, but still looking to take, hopefully, a stage victory. This one of his last chances, and we saw him right up there behind Fabio Aru on the stage to Montecampione. A little bit further down, Tim Wellens, we've seen a lot of him as well. Second on the stage to Monte Cassino. Did a great ride in the Ardennes Classics. Started with Amstel Gold, right through Flèche-Wallonne, Liège-Bastogne-Liège. Again, a young rider who's got massive prospects in all kinds of races over the coming years. Thomas de Gendt from Omega Pharma Quick-Step. Well, he was third overall, of course, here 2 years ago. Won on the Stelvio after an amazing attack. Was in the breakaway yesterday, up there again today. Could be someone potentially for Rigoberto Urán to jump across to, should he be feeling good later in the race. Dario Cataldo, former Italian time trial champion, been with Sky for the last couple of years, twice 12th overall in this race. Philip Dijkman from Team Sky has won a stage of the Vuelta before, and I think was around about 13th overall in that race in 2009. Ivan Rovny from Tinkoff Saxo. Arredondo, I don't think needs much more introduction. Ivan Basso, twice a winner of this race in 2006 and 2010. And there's one I've missed, Carlton. I think it's we've also got Losada, of course, from Katusha, and Rabatini, King of the Mountains, a couple of years ago in this race when still riding for the same Neri Sotoli team under a different name but same colours.
Just back to Martin Kaiser, 26 years of age. It was an awful long time. Came out of the Rabobank Continental team and then went to Vacances-Soleil, a team sadly that is no more. Just one of those teams that unfortunately just ran out of life, I guess, financially speaking. Yeah, he's been a busy old chap. He's had his results, third in the National Time Trial Championship, incidentally. So he can set a pace. I think that's the point, and that can be a vital thing on a day like this, especially on this intermediate 55 kilometres. We'll see how he goes. Why did we just kick on a little bit? I think you need manpower, especially with over 100 kilometres remaining. And I think if you're going to have a sort out, then leave it till a bit later. I'm just wondering, we've had these reports that Europcar would be working with Movistar today, maybe being gifted the right to go for the stage win, provided they keep the pace up and just hold everything together and allow Movistar not, or at least offer Movistar some support in the defence of the pink jersey. But it's all rumour at the moment. I mean, we will wait and find out. Academic for now. It is streaking down rain-wise at the finish. You can't quite see it, but you can see the spats just sitting on the umbrellas. And in fact, it is a very big grey cloud, but I can see beyond it, as you can now. There's some blue sky knocking around, and that shows you just how heavy it is. Partly cloudy with possible rain. Well, that possibility has turned into a certainty. We have got rain, and there's that lovely road surface we were talking about. It won't be, even though it is fairly new, it won't be a problem because the speeds as they climb are not going to be the issue. There is no descent within the final climb, and we have, of course, as always, our little play-in of the final kilometre coming in to the line for you, apparently. Here we are, Dan. It's on a drier surface, albeit this morning, and it'll be quick in, actually.
Quick-ish, if they've got anything left in the tank. It's still hard grades. In fact, this is pretty much gives you a good idea of exactly what the climb's like all the way up. Magnificent surface for riding on. Gradients of 8 to 9%, fairly steady all the way up. The hairpins, as you've already mentioned, Carlton, very, very flat on this climb. So oftentimes we'll see climbs where it's extremely steep if you go up the inside of a hairpin. Not the case here, but the rest of it, as I said, very much hovering around the 8.5% all the way up, and no different really at the finish, or it's about 9%, I believe, coming up here towards the line in this last kilometre.
Got a report that the rain has turned into sleet. Very heavy, sort of...
What do you mean a report? Looking out the window.
I've also got to tell you that it's actually now hail, and we have ice balls dropping upon us as we speak. So that is not good news. It should melt because the road has been reasonably warm, but right now we've got bouncing ice all over the place, and you're seeing it on your screen right now. Dan, we get every season, it seems, on this Giro, day by day.
I feel very sorry for the riders, actually. I mean, of course, they're paid pretty well to ride their bikes, but you wouldn't normally... Oh, there's an artistic shot for you. You wouldn't normally have to deal with this many consecutive days of rain. Even yesterday, of course, they ended up having to put up with some rain towards the end. It just makes recovery and everything just that little bit more difficult than if you have dry days. It's the drying of the shoes. You know, normally riders have very little to do at the end of a stage. If you get into a bus, everything's done for them. They get into their rooms where there's already water, their suitcases and everything else. All they've got to do is get in the lift, lie on the bed, maybe move to get a massage, but now they've got the task of drying shoes out as well. But it's not been very nice for them, I have to say. It's I don't know whether we've seen a Giro d'Italia with this much rain before.
Well, it was pretty snowy last year on occasion, but we did have our bright days, and those days when we really were uncomfortably hot. At least from the commentary position, I can tell you that it's actually been fine. We've had our own dousings and freezings along the way, and thankfully I'm just recovering from my nasty tonsillitis. Look at that. We got power, he says, and why not? Good to see that they're still engaging with us. How they'll be at the end of the day, I do not know. That was David Malakani, incidentally. This is how they stand overall, with Rigoberto Urán chasing the leader, Quintana, after handing over that pink jersey. Minute 41 down. Cadel Evans, who also led for a number of days here, of course, 3 minutes and 21 down. But look how close everyone else is. Pierre Rolland, no wonder he's looking for an advantage and maybe an ally out there in Quintana. 5 seconds is what he trails Cadel Evans at the moment. A little bit further back, Micah is only a couple of seconds further behind. Then Aru at 3 minutes and 34, he's very, very close in attendance. This is the young riders classification, and of course Quintana is leading this as well by 3 minutes and 28, which is Micah's deficit overall as well. Fabio Aru in this competition, he's also of course a challenger overall, but 3 minutes and 34 down. But then again, only away from Cadel Evans, what's that, 13 seconds away. It's very tight in that battle for the podium, and it's not all over yet between Urán and Quintana. We know that they'll be stalking each other today, and I expect, as Dan, you were saying earlier on, that Quintana will go for it today. I think he's got to. He just wants to stamp his authority, especially because of all the controversy about neutralised or not descents when he, of course, set his stall out.
Well, they seem to be allowing the gap to go up to this breakaway now. Very relaxed here in the peloton on this descent, and in fact we've seen pink jersey of Nairo Quintana along with pink shorts, helmet and everything else making his way back up to the peloton. So he obviously stopped on the side of the road for a little while. His compatriot, as you can see, confirmation, still leading in the overall climbers standings. The King of the Mountains, 127 points for him. As I said, second place Cataldo, third place now Wellens, and Chalapud dropping down to fourth. Overall standings in time for teams. Well, this is why we saw AG2R riding on the front yesterday. For those of you confused at home as to what the purpose of that was, it was because they only had one guy in the break. Omega Pharma Quick-Step had two, so you can see they started to encroach. 21 minutes the gap now. With De Gent up the road again today, you never know, maybe AG2R will start to ride again in that competition as well.
Here's your standings by points for Super Team, your best three finishers, and Omega Pharma is still leading that ahead of Lampre. So they're playing their way through this lovely verdant countryside. Normally at this time of year, or in the past I should say, because it seems to be getting to be the norm that we have inclement weather on the Giro. Hasn't dampened the spirits of our leader, as you can see. Paul Allen's written in on Twitter and says, given the recent Giros and the fact that riders do both the Giro, the fact that few riders do both the Giro and the Tour, does it make sense to move it to June? What an overlapping race. I think that would cause all sorts of sponsorship issues apart from anything else. So I don't think that's going to happen, Paul. But no, I think we're reasonably happy with the seating of the race where it is. The first Grand Tour, it sort of opens the Grand Tour season for us. The riders haven't been that vocal in their complaints about the weather. They've had other things to complain about, Dan. I think it's just part and parcel of being a pro rider. In fact, they don't mind it cool. It's just damp and dangerous they don't like.
No, it's very easy to cope with different temperatures. But the rain just makes it so hard, particularly on the hilly stages. Of course, on the flats, it's okay as well. You get a similar temperature the whole way through. You can put enough clothes on to keep yourself warm, but it's the constant changes of temperatures on the mountainous days in the rain that really affect you, because of course, I've said it many times before, but you produce a lot of heat on the climbs and then lose it all and more on the descent. It can get very, very cold indeed. That's exactly what they've had to cope with so far. You're right, Carlton, we haven't seen too many riders or heard too many riders complaining over the last couple of weeks. I think the majority of the complaints seem to come from Ireland, which is, I guess, where you'd expect it most. But now that we're in Italy, I was like, oh, we're in Italy, it's raining, so what?
Yeah.
It's the special city shoes of, I presume that must be Sammy Sanchez, former winner of the Olympics in Beijing in 2008, and has ever since carried a lot of gold generally on his bike. Not so much this year, now he's moved over to BMC, but particularly when he was back in the Escatel team, now defunct. He was sponsored by Aubert, and he had all sorts of gold bling. Quintana's got everything pink except for the bike, I believe, still his original one. I did see that they were building up a pink bike for him in the Canyon frame had delivered it, but understandably sticking to his original. It doesn't matter how well you seem to do it. Actually, if we cut back to the breakaway, he's not going to have it all his own way, Wellens, because Emanuele Sella has decided he wants to go for this intermediate sprint.
And why not? I think Androni have decided that they haven't been seen enough. And Wellens is on his tail right now.
What do you think you're doing?
I don't know. This is mine, for goodness sake. And he's stretching his legs. Here we are. Haven't quite been under it just yet. Holds on. He knows that now he's got the strength to go for it if he needs to. So cat and mouse, and we like a bit of this. It's amazing what an intermediate glory can throw up. You get yourself on the stat sheet, and more than that, you get your sponsor spoken about. Here we go.
Yeah, not far now before they'll be crossing the line that we saw on our screens a few moments ago. Wellens going for it. Hard to see Sella managing to come past the rider here from Lotte. Giving up though. He's just about 5 metres behind. Can he come round it? No, giving up now.
No. It's not going to be my day. Leave it to the man with the big legs. There he goes. Wellens gets another one and gets some applause and a very nice bravo as well. I think she said Buani, mistaking the red jersey. Oh
well. 10 points was where Wellens sat this morning on that intermediate sprints competition, but today being a mountainous day, not quite so many points on offer for that intermediate sprint. They've given each stage a category, and the amount of points awarded at the intermediate sprint and at the finish very much different depending on the category of the stage, whether it's mountainous or flat.
I think the weather, as you can see now, they're in baking sunshine yet again. 20 Celsius incidentally, 22 Celsius, and high up in the mountains that's quite warm. And then of course they'll have snow and ice to deal with, and this change of temperature, it really has struck a few. Yeah,
2 more riders actually not starting this morning for those of you who just joined us. Ulissi of Lampre, well, it was his team manager who we saw encouraging him to finish yesterday's stage. He wanted to pull out already after he came down with some kind of fever. Managed to get through the stage, but felt so bad last night they already announced in the evening that he wouldn't be starting this morning. So Lampre did have a full complement of 9 riders. They're now down to 8, of course, with Ulissi not starting this morning. A team which very much didn't have a full complement of 9 riders was Orica Greenedge. They were down to 3 in fact yesterday. All of them finished. Santa Romita, the Italian champion, was a rider who we'd interviewed in the morning who said he wasn't feeling particularly good, and another guy who succumbed to fever didn't start this morning. Matt White, sports director of Orica Greenedge, telling reporters that he'll do everything he can to get Michael Hepburn and former pink jersey wearer Svein Tuft to the finish, even if it means putting them in his boot, he said, I
think. It's quite a list of cancelled hotels for Orica Greenedge then. It's a tight little group then. Only Michael Hepburn and Svein Tuft remaining. Svein Tuft, of course, the man who wore the pink jersey first of all on this Giro d'Italia. Seems a long time ago now, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. All the way back in Belfast. How well was the race received back there? I've still got some great memories, and we'll hold them for a long, long time.
Yes, those watching in Northern Ireland and indeed the Republic, what a great event you put on. 3 days of fabulous racing, and undampened, I think you might say, by the weather, which was inclement, and we've had plenty of that, of course, in Italy. This is the profile that the riders are having to deal with today. As you can see, they're about to head, our breakaway riders, onto a downhill section. Nearly 7.5 minutes behind are the main bunch, which include all of the jerseys except for the blue jersey on the back of Arredondo, and he did a great job of hoovering up the points on the first of today's categorised climbs, and it looks like he is minded to do exactly the same on the second. I don't think anyone will stop him. I think he'll do that. I don't think you'll see much of him at the very last. But should he take the second categorised climb, I think he will be virtually out of reach. He would basically have to fall off the bike not to get that blue jersey by the end. So Colombia will have almost secured one jersey. And of course, overall, and the young riders jersey, looks like those two colours, pink and white, will be going home on the back of Quintana. Still got a time trial tomorrow, a climbing time trial of 26.8 kilometres. Then we have the Zoncolan, which really is the last chance saloon for everybody who's thinking or is minded to advance themselves in the overall. Today there are so many riders that are tight together that you're going to see some attacks. It's inevitable. Not necessarily trying to encroach on Quintana's advantage, although don't put Iran out of your mind in that regard. Cadel Evans is 3 minutes and 21 down, and then only 55 seconds separate Evans and Ajdal, with the intervening riders Pierre Roland, Rafa Majka, Fabio Aru, Domenico Pozzovivo and Wilco Kelderman. They will all have an interest today in attacking, and of course Ryder Ajdal is a man who can set a rhythm beautifully up the sort of slopes that we're dealing with at the end today. And so I think if the main contenders come to that section, then expect Ryder Ajdal to start imposing himself, unless somebody decides to go for an explosive one. The terrain really does favour somebody who can swing like a metronome, and there's no great shocks on the climb either. It's smooth, so Ryder can be schmooth. I think I put an extra CH in the middle of all of that. But yes, so watch out late on, all you Canucks out there. I think your man might have a proper go today. The moisture that's falling from the sky in all its forms, and I guess today we're going to have everyone in all their forms thinking that they've got a chance. If you are a climber, a puncher, a GC man, and maybe even if you can set a tempo, to be honest, it didn't feel that bad, today's climb down at the end as we drove up it, and with the surface as well, it might offer up the unexpected.
Well, it's regular. I wouldn't say it's not bad in terms of how hard it is. You know, it's a very regular gradient of 8 to 9%. It's one of those things where it very much depends on the way that the peloton tackles things. We haven't had a team here, and I don't think we will today, who's been able to control things and keep an extremely high tempo like we've got used to seeing Team Sky do over the last couple of years in the Tour de France. That was missing, and we saw that the effect that had on the main favourites on the stage, the Monte Campione. Aru won there, but there was a point, Carlton, wasn't there, where almost all of the GC favourites came to a stop. Philip Dijkman was still up the road, I believe. Things were looking good for him for a while there. Yeah. Because there was no teammates left to do the job of making the tempo on the front, it means that, you know, these guys still don't want to be riding on the front, the GC guys, even on 8 to 9% gradients, because there is still a slight benefit from sitting behind, and so you can, you know, use your energy up, and the others can take advantage of that. That's the difference between having a hugely strong team of climbers who can ride at an amazing tempo and shed pretty much everybody, leaving just you to make your attack if you're feeling good, compared to what we've got in this race, which is, you know, some good strong teams, but perhaps not those train of climbers that are able to do something like that.
It's amazing, actually. Teams function in different manners. BMC and Cadel Evans, though, they seem to have changed the way that they approach a day such as this, and indeed some of the tougher climbs. They essentially brought help in for Cadel Evans, where he used to do most of his mountain work on his own. Cannondale as well. I just don't think they are minded to support climbers effectively. Just looking at the handout going on here from Tinkoff Saxo.
Oleg Tinkoff, the owner there.
Yeah, giving us the thumbs up.
Slightly animated again.
Rare view of him, to be honest. He's a huge cycling nut, and I think we can just say thank you very much for that. It's great to have those who are in control of a good deal of wealth spending it on cycling, which helps us all enjoy it. Just back to that Cannondale point, Sagan, the way he rides into climbs, he burns his team, and he's quite happy to do it. And it's the same when he approaches a sprint, to be honest, because you know he's a great all-rounder. But he fries his team. He's not overly concerned about having too much protection. he's a man who does it on his own. And I just wonder whether that mindset has spread through the team and it's affected their success levels here.
Yeah, hard to say on that one.
Speculative. 62.7 kilometres, 7 minutes and 41. Yeah, having people like Tinkoff down, spending their funds to help us, the rest of us enjoy cycling, is only to be encouraged.
Yeah, as long as they continue to do so. I mean, the problem sometimes with those kind of rich investors is if they lose interest in what is effectively a hobby for them, putting millions into a cycling team, then of course they can withdraw the funding, and if the team doesn't find a sponsor, that's a lot of jobs down the drain. And we've got a few teams really that don't have a company as such sponsoring them. Katusha is a kind of conglomerate of very rich Russians. Astana, of course, is the capital of Kazakhstan, and very much politicians involved in that as well, more like a national well-funded team, as opposed to the likes of Team Sky, which is of course a corporate company, Garmin, who make the satellite navigation devices, both for cars, vehicles and of course bikes, which is actually really on the up. Of course, a lot of cars these days come with their own sat-navs in them, but the biggest problem for Garmin has been the invention of the smartphone, which is quickly becoming just as efficient, if not more so, than the sat-navs at giving you the right directions and also the traffic. Had a few mentions on Twitter. If you'd like to write in, we will do our best to respond. My handle on Twitter is Daniel Lloyd1, DANIEL LLOYD and the number 1. Or Carlton is CARLTONKIRBY. Jason Gregg writes in, presumably from the US, might have got that wrong though, but fine job you're doing. How about a shout out, get well soon for Taylor Phinney? Well said, yes. He, for those of you who haven't seen the news, after taking a victory in the Time Trial Championships of the United States last week, he was one of the favourites going into the road race, and had a very unfortunate incident with one of the race vehicles, one of the race motorbikes on a descent, crashed into the barrier on the side of the road and has broken his leg particularly badly. So he'll be in hospital, of course, still, and will miss out on his debut at the Tour de France this July. So, yep, you're right, Jason. Very good time to give a shout out to Taylor Phinney, and of course we do hope you get well very, very soon.
Yeah, Taylor, if you're watching in, I actually just completed a brief synopsis on him. or on you, Taylor, if you're actually indeed watching in the United States, because I know some of you can. Phenomenal stuff in Dubai. In fact, it was his first GC title. He's a young man, he's only 23, son of a couple of Olympians, a massive future, and he's young enough to get over a broken leg and still be a god on a bike. So yeah, double thumbs up for Taylor. Get well soon, mate. I want to see you back. Hello. Here's a man who was thinking about putting a big wedge into cycling.
Yeah, and sat behind him the man that's going to run it, the team. That's Fernando Alonso, the Formula 1 driver in the front seat, rumoured and almost confirmed to be setting up a team next year. A little bit of a problem with the UCI, where they want guarantees of World Tour status, which the UCI are unwilling to give given their current rules. And behind him, Paolo Bettini, double world champion in road racing in the past, Italian rider, rode for the likes of Mappe over the years. He's the man who's seems to be being given the task to manage the squad, to sign the riders, and yeah, let's hope that happens.
Yeah, well, we're talking about sugar daddies for sports, but Fernando Alonso, of course, self-made man, doing done an amazing job within the world of Formula 1 himself, and now wants to spread the love a bit. He's using his considerable marketing clout. He is a bit of a lightning rod when it comes to that sort of thing, especially in Spain. And of course, why not? He was going to pick up Euskaltel, incidentally, but decided he wanted to not have any baggage when he had his own team. It was going to be by his own design. And quite understandable, I guess. If you are going to be the centre point, then why carry out other people's bidding? So, yeah, we're going to wait and see what that team is going to be, and indeed which personnel they managed to draw in. There's been all sorts of rumours as to who might be tempted.
And amongst the rumours was Peter Sagan, who is, of course, at the end of his contract at the end of 2014. Currently riding for Cannondale, one of the most marketable and wanted riders in the peloton at the moment. Also Tinkoff Saxo interested, and I think when the owner, Oleg Tinkoff, who we saw on our screens a few moments ago, was asked what the budget was for Peter Sagan to take him on. He said, there is no budget, just whatever I choose to spend.
How nice is that? Henro van Rooyen has written in and said, just tell us what the average salary of a pro is. It varies. We've been over the San Pellegrino. The Passo Red Bus hasn't even warranted an afterthought, I don't think. However, it's worth it, and especially that last 4.6 kilometres. It's absolutely hellish. It maxes at 15%, and we 53 kilometres is where the climb, the real hurting part of it begins. We're going to be on a flatter section. The peloton aren't there yet. They're still on the climb because they're albeit 8 minutes or so, 7 minutes or so behind. This is that flat section we were talking about, Dan. It actually does turn into a downhill before it ramps up very shortly.
Yeah, the hardest part still to come. Not particularly what they've dealt with already on the Pellegrino and what they've got here to come up towards the finish, but nonetheless still going to sting the legs a little bit if the pace is kept high. Cataldo shaking his head there, a little bit upset at the riders, and he was starting to get a bit lazy and try and skip turns on the front to save energy, and that's the kind of thing that we'll start to expect to see a lot of from now towards the finish. The more confident they get in see the cat and mouse games between riders who want to save as much energy as possible.
Seems that our helicopter man is still herding the animals. Meanwhile, there are other beasts, as you can see, further down the mountain, and some of them just starting to suffer, I'm afraid to tell you. No great surprise, I guess. Johnny Hogeland was with his baby daughter yesterday. Apparently lives in the locale, so he's maybe lives and trains around these mountains. So yeah, he didn't quite get into the break. Said it was part of his plan, but didn't make it, and clearly suffering today on these tests. This is just the opening foot of a series of steps that make up the Redebus that we're on now. And Johnny looks like he'd rather be somewhere else just at the moment. Kieselowski, incidentally, is, but he's got a big cushion of around 6 minutes back to the 11th place Viamos. So Kieselowski looks like he's bedded in and cemented into 10th place, unless something dramatic happens, because there's a 4 minute or so gap, a little bit less than that, to Ryder Eggedal. But Ryder could move up 4 or 5 places, especially as we've got the time trial tomorrow. And of course there's more mountain climbing to come with the Zoncolan, which is just a ridiculous test on the penultimate day. Ridiculous in a very good way, obviously.
For us.
For us. Not for them necessarily. 50.7 kilometres to go. Yeah, a lot of shakeout about to happen. And even on today, stage winner is likely to come from the break. But you just watch these guys starting to attack each other for podium places. Maybe not with an interest of winding Quintana back, because it looks like a virtually impossible task. He leads by 1 minute and 41. Only Iran can get him, essentially, we believe. Probably that's the belief of Uran and his team. We'll see how they go for it today, Omega Pharma Quick Step, or whether they'll leave it until the Zoncolan or indeed the time trial tomorrow. That's a dangerous strategy. You've got to take time when you can get it. Dan, Lloyd and myself both think that Quintana will try and impose himself today and maybe just break away from that group and put even more time, like a heartbreaker, today. Well, this is that test. We said it wasn't easy, and they won't get to the top of it down for 2 kilometres.
No, it's a big test coming up here with the gradients that they're having to go through at the moment, and not surprised then to see 2 Colombians riding on the front. Duarte possibly favoured out of this group to take stage victory. On his wheel, Arredondo. Is he giving him some kind of favour for the mountain points here, which he's hoping will be returned on the climb to the finish? I'm not sure. I think Arredondo himself will be, thinking this is one of his last chances to take stage victory, and I think he'll go for it as much as he possibly can. He'll have the mountain. Yeah, still Arredondo and Cataldo up there towards the front. Be a battle fairly shortly to sprint for these mountain points at the top. To remind you, 14 and 9 for the first and second that go over, which looks likely to be these two. The great break behind. Riding tempo up here, content in the knowledge that in all likelihood they will just come rolling back to the breakaway over the top on the descent, and it will all be back together for the final climb. I'm surprised in some ways Cataldo has gone with Arredondo here. It seems very unlikely that Cataldo will be able to nick this jersey from Arredondo, and equally I think he could have pretty much stayed in the group behind and guaranteed second place fairly easily and saved some energy, because for my mind a stage win here for Sky is going to be hugely important, more so of course than second place in the King of the Mountains competition. Not to say of course that Cataldo can't get in the breakaway on the penultimate day of the race and take more points there, but seems to be a long shot, and of course he'll be very much marked by both Arredondo and his Trek Factory Racing team. But using a little bit more energy than he absolutely had to here, Cataldo. His teammate Dygan, I've already mentioned, on great form this final week of the Giro, and in an interview with Matt Rindell at the start of one of the stages, he said he was hoping to start feeling better in the second week, but actually it took 2 weeks before he did begin to feel himself. Of course, was injured at the start of the season, broke his collarbone in training, so only had one stage race in his legs when he came into this race. But we've seen through Michael Rogers that lack of racing doesn't hinder you. Mick Rogers only doing Liège-Bastogne-Liège for Tinkoff Saxo before he started this race, and he's taken a stage win and appears to be on fine form still in his third week.
Yeah, a break can a break as good as a test. Is the new T-shirt, I guess. Yes, so some just riding, keeping their legs spinning, and it does a job, and this is a proper competition here. I think Arredondo might just say, well, go on then, if you're that bothered. Oh no, he's picking it up, this is nice, and then thinking better about it as well. He's got to think about his own energy levels as well. Arredondo is taking it to the line, and good to see that he's actually fighting for this and not being handed it on a plate to a certain extent. And chapeau to him for timing that well and putting, well, Cataldo back in the box. If you ever do get one of these mobile home things, as opposed to caravans, motor caravan, is that what they call them? I think so. So a powered caravan. Yeah, you sleep above it, and they're lovely places to be, and in fact you can find yourself in many reasonably inaccessible or inhospitable parts of the world with all your home comforts. Nothing like a bacon sandwich on top of an Alp. 43.6 kilometres is the remaining distance today. There's a lot of climbing to be done, but not for some time. In fact, it's only now the last 16.3 kilometres they've got to worry about, so they've got time to play.
Interesting though, it's starting to split up, Carlton, on this descent. 3 riders at the head of the race. Duarte, we've also got Ivan Basso, who's descending better than I've ever seen him today, along with Thomas de Gent, who we saw descending incredibly well yesterday. They've got a reasonable sized gap back to this chase group of 3 here, which is Dignan, Arredondo and Kaiser of Belkin. So a couple of riders deciding to push things on this descent and try to split the group up before the final climb of the day.
Yeah, Basso is putting well and truly to bed any questions about his descending ability. I think the roads that we've been talking about being excellent are actually playing into his hands, because he's not being frightened by them, and a fear is basically the brake on a descent.
He's throwing caution to the wind. I guess, you know, without any GC ambitions really for him left in this race. He's 13th overall, but that doesn't mean anything to this man who's won the into taking a stage victory, so he's taking slightly more risks than perhaps he would have done had he been in the top 3 or 4 on GC, which of course is a position he's been in many times before, not just in the Giro d'Italia but in a whole host of other big races as well. But yeah, surprise to me, I haven't I've ridden with Basso a few times. I guess the amount of time I've spent descending with him is fairly minimal, although in the Tour de France that I rode in 2010 he was off colour. And he ended up in the Gruppetto, which must have been one of the first times in his entire career where he was off the back of the race with the rest of us mere mortals who kind of get ourselves through, and it was very funny. Shall I tell you why?
Go on.
Because he was setting a pace, even when ill, slightly too hard for everybody in the Gruppetto, who's of course very annoyed, because there's a point at which you're comfortable, and of course as everyone that rides a bike knows, this is one point where it's just a little bit too much and you're constantly fighting the bike to keep up, and that's the kind of pace that Basso was setting on the front of the Gruppetto. But coming towards the top, he stopped on the side of the road to put a rain jacket on for the descent to keep himself warm. Of course none of the Gruppetto do that, and not being used to the Gruppetto, of course, I don't think he'd realise that it's on the descents where we used to make up time on the good guys in front, despite them. So it was a good 45 minutes before I saw Ivan Basso again, who'd had to chase on his own and only called just midway up the next climb.
So he just did not have an idea about how to cope with you guys. I love that. At the back, in unfamiliar territory. It's, yeah, well, the king is back, maybe. We'll see. Basso's pushing on the descent. We've just got a minor picture breakup at the moment, which is why we're cutting to the finish line. You see the road is wet, but the shadows are defined, and the sun has broken out, so it might well be that we have a dry approach. This is that beautiful road surface we were talking about. It is amazing, and in fact it looks like they're on a pretty similar surface, at least for now, on this descent. The gap's coming down, and having Basso charging down the mountain at the front is not necessarily the best idea, because he's reasonably happy here. This shows intent from Basso that he wants there to be a moderate shakeout. 14's too many. He wants to find out who's capable of coping with, and there's your answer.
Yeah, he's brought a few riders clear with him. Tim Wellens is also up here at the front. The Belgian rider from Lotto Belisol, who's not probably amongst the best climbers in this group, has decided also he wants to try and make a gap on the descent to the other riders in the group. But the problem for all Duarte Free, who, as I've been mentioning, is probably the best climber in the group of 14 which we had at the front.
Yes, he's not the sort of guy that you want to give a free pass to, and that might well be it once more. Absolutely the kind of terrain that will suit him down to the ground if he sets himself a tempo on that last peak up towards the Panarotta. I think he's got a chance. The only downside is that there's a lot of ambition in the GC spot. As we said, only 55 seconds separating 7 riders, of which the best placed is Cadel Evans in 3rd place. We are assuming that Aran and Quintana, it'll be a private battle until the end of this race. Now, however, those words we may have to reconsider, and I guess we're going to find out. First chance for anyone to make serious inroads is today, but with the form that Quintana is on, and indeed Aran, it's a long shot. Long shots have happened before. Onto the flat area then. As you can see, we've come off those mountains behind. It really was a long way down, and it is indeed now well and truly over into the 7-minute bracket, and there's just no rush at all. There's a very distinct line through a descent, Dan, unless you really are minded to go offline and into the zone of lunacy. And if you are about control, and of course Movistar are, this is a great position for them to be in, a very long descent where they can just hold the speed, hold the pace, pick their lines, be safe, and basically it's a too tall an order for anyone else to nullify that.
Yeah, it's been very well controlled by the Spanish Movistar team today. It's the first real test that they've had. Of course, Quintana only going into the pink jersey 2 days ago. Yesterday was very, very easy for them. They've only used up 2 riders working so far on the front. Ventoso and Mallory are the guys, the bigger guys of the team, who've been doing and sharing the workload between them. That, of course, leaves them with 6 riders very capable at climbing around Quintana up to this last climb towards the finish. Whether they'll go for a very solid tempo or whether they'll choose to sit and wait and see what other people do remains to be seen. But the advantage Movistar have got is, of course, that they've got 9 riders still in this race. One of only 2 teams to have a full complement left in this year's Giro d'Italia. Lampre and Merida were part of that, but last night lost Diego Ulissi. Trek Factory Racing, the only other team with 9 riders, including this man, just gone through your screen there. Arredondo in the blue jersey as best climber. So, of course, that's playing into their hands, Movistar, the fact that they've got a full team still here at full strength as well, despite the bandages. And yeah, they've got a lot of guys still around the pink jersey there, ready for this final climb at the finish. And so if there's any kind of catastrophes in terms of mechanicals or anything else that might happen, they've got a lot of people on hand to help him and make sure that he stays in that jersey all the way through to the end in Trieste.
When Ryder Ejderdahl won in 2012, can you remember how strong his team were, how full strength his team were at the end? How many were missing?
I don't remember how many they'd lost. I know they had some good climbers, of course, in the form of Christian van der Velde, who's retired at the end of last year. I can't remember the exact composition of the team. I remember David Miller wasn't here, which he was gutted about. It was the first Giro d'Italia that he'd missed for many, many years, and so wasn't able to give his friend Ryder help along the way. I'm sure he would have loved to have been here and experienced winning a Grand Tour with a team, because it is very much a team thing, and you all feel like you've done a hell of a lot lot, and you have to help a rider along the way. I'm saying it like I've done it before, but did help Sastre along to 4th overall in this race, not quite the same.
Yeah, exactly. You know, don't do yourself down too much, Dan. It's a joy to have you. Sonero. Sounds good. 16.7 kilometres, 6.5 minutes now. They've knocked quite a bit of time out, actually, Dan. They've just started to encroach ever so slightly on our pained, I might add, breakaway group. Some of them are going to start suffering, and soon.
Here we go then on the paved roads which come at the foot of this climb. Zardini, the Bardiani rider. Could he add a 4th stage victory for that Italian team? Would be incredible if he could. Meanwhile, just ahead of him, Pelizzotti and Sella already look like they're wavering to me very, very slightly. And right at the head of affairs, Thomas again, yesterday's star man, soloing off the front of a big breakaway of 26, ultimately being caught by four of the riders. Pirazzi, of course, the guy that ended up taking stage victory, but again has a quick look over his shoulders, sees he's got a bit of a gap and decides to continue and pursue up the road, hoping, of course, that they look at each other behind and he manages to get a decent gap before the slightly higher gradients begin, although to be honest, Carlson, I think they're pretty much on those gradients now.
They are. This is one of those little 14% sections that De Gent attacked on. There are some respite areas for the others to make inroads into that gap, but as the main bunch pass under the 20k to go marker, you see that 16.2 is on your screen top left. That's where the break are, and suddenly Europcar pick it up. Well, maybe now is the time that they are going to impose themselves. Pierre Rolland has an interest, more than that. He's looking for a stage win, but they've got a lot of work to do, and they've left it a bit late down with 6 minutes and 20 to eat in, especially when you've got people like De Gent up the road who are capable. We've seen him winning on the Stelvio. There's no reason why he can't stretch his legs again today, straight off the back of being busy yesterday.
Yeah, this little dip I was talking to you about earlier, 1 kilometre into the official climb itself. Europcar, in my mind, riding on the front now to position Roland well at the foot of the climb, rather than really to try and go for stage victory now. As you said, Carlton, the calibre of rides and the strength of climbers you've got in this group will make it very, very difficult to close a gap of 6 minutes, even with the likes of Quintana going flat out. I think pretty confident in saying still that it will be the breakaway who fights it out for victory today. Thomas De Gent, maybe not being that confident in his climbing abilities, has decided to push on ahead, and meanwhile behind we've got the remaining 13 riders looking at each other, deciding who's going to do the chasing again. Similar kind of scenario in some ways to yesterday, Carlton.
Yeah, absolutely. We just passed the van that has more flags stuck in it than an orange with cheesy squares at a dodgy party. Yes, they had an awful lot of Australian success early on. Right now, it's about the Colombians, but on your screen you'd think it was about France. Pierre Rolland sitting up like a meerkat, just having a look at his boys and indeed harrying them with directions. Basically, he wants pace. Pile it on, fellas, and it's under 6 minutes right now with 15.1 kilometres to go of proper climbing.
Yeah, that pace will continue to be very, very high in the peloton as all of the teams start to place their GC riders towards the front. Of course, Ryder Hesjedal, I won't say he's got to do things on his own, but with only 3 teammates left here in the race, and Tyler Farrar, I believe, out the back, he'll be relying on Nathan Haas and Cardoso to do the majority of the work. In fact, I think they'll be leaving it to Haas if at all possible. Cardoso has proven to be climbing very, very well over the last part of the race. He was, of course, one of the last remaining riders at the front after the break into Montecampione just a few days ago on Sunday, and in fact was very instrumental in helping Ryder Hesjedal back to the group during a crucial moment of the climb where the Canadian had been dropped. So Cardoso likely to remain towards the front of the peloton. Meanwhile, here in the breakaway, well, Sella is doing the controlling duties of that group there behind. To my mind, he's working for Pelizzotti today, bringing back this duo of Tim Bellens and the Neri Sotoli rider, who is, of course, Rabatini. Meanwhile, in front still, we've got Thomas De Gent on his own, the rider from Belgium, and Omega Pharma Quickstep.
Arashiro picks it up. Man has tasted the tarmac here, I'm afraid, on a couple of occasions, but the Japanese flag is being shone valiantly by him, and they're starting to work. Rabatini fancies the day, and I'm not surprised. Of those that we have considered, Neri Sotoli's Rabatini is a man that maybe wouldn't have immediately sprung to mind, but he's had success in the past, and this is the kind of day where he's tasted it.
Against the other riders.
Yeah, call for pace, or maybe just go and enjoy yourself, and it's Zicard that is allowed off the leash by Pierre Rolland. go and have some fun, see what you can do, and maybe it's a man for Roland to bridge over to a little bit later. He's been given the get-go. Roland stays where he is, just behind the Movistar rider that's leading on at the moment, and Roland is just ahead of Quintana, and you can see excuse me, Oran also very much to the fore. Likewise, I have to add, rider Ejidal, who's spinning up a decent one today. I don't know whether he's going to have an attempt at an attack, and all of a sudden it all starts to go and Roland picks it up, but guess who? Quintana goes with him, and there's no escape. There may as well be a tow rope between the pair of them at the moment, and Oran just increases his cadence as well and shows what he still has left in his legs.
Yeah, Evans, the man that Roland is trying to displace in the classification, has slipped quite a long way down. You can just see him there in the background. Oh, and exactly what we predicted has happened. Thomas de Gent deciding he's going to make another move. The others have looked at each other behind, and he's got a small gap between himself and those riders. But 5Ks to go, Carlton. It's a long shot for him. He's certainly not the strongest of the climbers, but Roland, let's just remind you, is in 4th place in the general classification, 5 seconds behind Cadel Evans. He wants to try and gain some time on Evans and the riders behind him in the classification.
So Roland decides to go for it. Likewise, de Gent. De Gent has got a rider bridging over to him. It is, of course, Pozzovivo. Sorry, I beg your pardon, Pelizzotti from Androni Giocattoli. Androni desperate for a win. They've looked jealously over the fencing in the start zone at Bardiani, and their wide grins courtesy of 3 stage wins for them. Perazzi it was yesterday, Canola and Bataglin. And I imagine that Gianni Savio has almost insisted that it's the least that they expect, at least one stage win if they've got an invite to the Giro d'Italia. They usually make a good account of themselves. There is Cadel Evans, and you can see Aru is also here, and the aforementioned Pozzovivo of AG Tour Le Mondial. But it's about those at the front who look the freshest. And right now, that is Roland, Oran, and indeed Quintana.
Well, Kelderman was just making an attack then, along with rider Hejdahl, who are just bridging up to the Europcar rider Sikar. Meanwhile, at the front, Pelizzotti's distance Thomas de Gent. These riders behind in the breakaway are going to have to start riding together, because this man, whilst he didn't look great on the lower slopes, has been setting his own pace all the way up. He's a great climber, Pelizzotti. Could Androni have their day finally?
Here he is. It's rider Ejidal, and he's putting in a bit of pace. Now, he's a man who likes to set his own. Right now, it's not exactly a coping pace. He's got some management left in his reserve, so he can stretch it and relax a little bit. Not too much, however. Meanwhile, Pelizzotti is doing anything but. He is absolutely going for this with 4.5 to go. And finally, I believe we found somebody who might just do it alone. Feeling very alone right now and almost abandoned, it seems. Cadel Evans.
Yeah, he's now being distanced after rider Hejdahl, the Canadian from Garmin Sharp, increased the pace. You can see Evans is unfortunately struggling to hang on to this group, which contains all of the rest of the top 10. Evans could find himself slipping today, Carlton, from 3rd to 9th place if he isn't able to keep up with that group. Hejdahl is in 9th place at the front. He sits 55 seconds down on Evans at the moment, and when he looks round and when he hears on race radio that Evans is in trouble, he's going to continue to press on.
Pressing on as well, Arredondo, and it's all falling to pieces as far as the GC boys are concerned. Well, if there was an alliance that has been formed between Europcar and indeed Movistar, right now it is all starting to break down. Pierre Roland there working with Quintana and Oran and Ejidal. And Ejidal has a look, sees who's around him, and maybe just decides to change the pace and take up that chase down himself. Maybe he's got something left. What's Arredondo got left? Well, he's plenty, it seems. He constantly just picks it up. He bridges over to Pelizzotti and goes by him in that blue jersey. Meanwhile, close at hand is Duarte. They might well do the old 1-2 here and just constantly keep rolling into each other. That's going to nullify the challenge of Pelizzotti, I'm afraid. And it is Duarte that just rolls in front of him. Does he roll by him and push on? He does! 2 Colombians are going for this.
Yeah, once again proving to be the strongest climbers. It's a very close call between these two, and of course Pelizzotti's not going to be giving up either. Arredondo pushing on, Duarte coming up. What a day for Colombia, also with Quintana there looking so comfortable in the pink jersey.
Right, Ejidal flicks out the elbows and says, come on guys, you're going to have to join in if we're going to make any inroads here. 3.7 kilometres to go for the leaders. 3 minutes and 20 further down the road are those guys. Meanwhile, Arredondo is on a chase here and is determined that it's not just going to be points, but maybe prizes as well. Can he possibly get the stage win today? The 10th of the road opens it up. Meanwhile, opening up the taps is Arredondo. Can he make it all the way? He's got 2.3 kilometres to go, and save for the nutters, which may well distract him. I hope they don't lose that flag. It could get tangled just about anywhere. He's talking to him. He's not listening. He's focused. He means business. And likewise, so does this man. Oh, you know, Duarte is capable. So is Roland. And he kicks off. And this is space. This is proper space for the first time. And I think maybe by agreement, Quintana's not going to follow him. And this is Pierre Roland taking strides up the GC order.
Well, Pierre Roland sit this morning at 3 minutes and 26 seconds down on Quintana. I don't think Quintana's too worried about this Frenchman going up the road. He's moving himself into third place in the general classification, up 1 place from where he started this morning. And meanwhile, behind, group of favourites are just starting to look at each other.
They are indeed. I think Kelderman has decided that he has no option but to go for this. Kelderman sits in 8th place, albeit if he makes up some seconds over Pozzovivo, Aru, and indeed others ahead of him, like Micah, he can take also a couple of steps forward. Remember, only 55 seconds separate position 3 to 9, 7 riders, of which Cadel Evans led in 3rd place. Of course, Quintana and Oran are here, and I think they might well let these guys have their head.
Here we go then. Here comes one of the Tinkoff Saxo riders out on the front to set a tempo. Is that Rovny having come back from the breakaway? It might well be, and he's going to set the pace. Rafael Micah in that white jersey on the wheel of Nairo Quintana.
Here goes Pierre Roland, 1,800 metres, not for him, you understand. He's 3 minutes or so further down the road, but he'll be designated as a chaser before you know it, and will be given his own time gap in just a few moments' time. Meanwhile, up the road we have Arredondo wearing that blue jersey that is of the climber. No stage wins so far for Trek Factory Race. Confirmation of your stage results. Arredondo, king of the mountain, well and truly. That blue jersey belongs to him. He has to finish, of course. Duarte nearest to him, making it a Colombian 1-2 for the stage. Dagner, great ride by the Irishman for Sky, 37 seconds adrift. Look at the time gaps here. All the break coming in before Aru made it across. 2 minutes and 43, so gaining time, 3 seconds on Quintana, but significantly the time gaps back to those further down or further ahead of him in the general classification. It means that Aru moves up good and proper. And here we are. Aru sits a tempting 2 seconds behind Pierre Roland in that battle for the podium place, and in fact shares exactly the same time as Rafa Micah. Some late pushes by Roland and Micah stopping Aru getting on the podium. Cadel Evans tumbles to 9th place, as you can see. Ryder Ejidal losing time today, 4 minutes and 32 down now. There are some big gaps, we knew there would be, but it's still Colombians 1 and 2, with Quintana and Uran still dominant, and the same gap maintained going into the mountain time trial.